Deep in the mountains of the western wilderness, the elusive spirit of wild, untamed North America still runs free. Once horses roamed free throughout the world. Now banished by civilization to a few remote outposts, they make a final stand against the unforgiving pressures of progress. And their days, like their numbers, are in danger of vanishing forever. In North America, the wild Mustang, once numbered in the thousands, ruled the West and became a symbol of frontier freedom. But now, they too stand firmly on the brink of extinction. "55 million years ago, the evolutionary journey of the horse began here in North America. Its prehistoric lineage can be traced back to a small, dog-like creature with 5 toes that over time would adapt to the Great Plains and ultimately a single hoof. 15 million years later, descendants of the first horse began to migrate across the long-gone land bridge between Europe and the Americas. As the glaciers of the last great ice age retreated 13,000 years ago, the mountain foothills became the feeding grounds for an abundance of mammoths, camels, bison, muskoxen, and large herds of pony-sized horses. Fleet of foot and quick of ear and nostril, they were well adapted to life on the open steppes. But 2,000 years later, the North American horse mysteriously vanished. In 1996, on the drought-stricken bed of Alberta's St. Mary Reservoir, local schoolteacher Shane Tolman took a walk into history. Glittering in the sand, he found a spearhead. Looking closer, he found dozens more, and beside them, animal footprints. And then he found what made them: the bones of a wealth of Ice Age animals. Rarest of all were the skeletons of prehistoric wild horses. Intrigued with the news that animal remains and human artifacts had been found in the same place, a team of scientists went to investigate what became one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in North American history. On the surface, the arid reservoir revealed an astonishing visual profile of animal and human interaction at the end of the last ice age. But as they dug deeper, their excitement grew with the discovery of new evidence that could solve an ancient mystery.
There's no other site in North America, probably in the world, that has the richness of animal tracks from the end of the glacial period. No other site like that in North America, and probably not in the world.
3 meters 50 by 75 centimeters to the east.
The other thing that's really, really significant about this site is the fact that we have horses that we can see were exploited by people. And there are archaeological sites elsewhere in North America where there are 1 or 2 horse bones. But this is the only site where we have a number of horses, stone tools associated with them, cut mark bone. We can actually see that people were hunting and butchering these animals.
Using the carbon-14 method, the site could be dated to about 11,300 years ago, when southern Alberta looked a lot like Africa's teeming Serengeti Plain, and herds of ancient animals roamed its grasslands.
We lost there for carbon-14 date.
It was also the time when many of these remarkable creatures began to inexplicably disappear. Although several unproven theories exist, the horse skeletons and native artifacts found together at the site are the first solid evidence that hunting was a contributing factor. 14,000 years ago, big game hunters from Siberia crossed the Bering Land Bridge to a new world. Using simple stone-tipped spears, the first North Americans were fearless predators, but no evidence existed to suggest they were also hunting wild horses.
These points were all found at the site. These two actually had horse protein residue on them, and that's the key thing. When you find the people's tools, in particular weapon tips, covered in the protein residue of the horses, well, there you are. That's pretty clear proof that they were actually using these in hunting the horses.
The lure of a constant water supply for hundreds of animals made the banks of the ancient river valley an ideal ambush site. Spear tips found and dated here prove that human hunters were doing just that as far back as 13,000 years ago.
It's telling us a slice of our history that we had no clue about really before at all. And of course, because some of this stuff is totally unique, it's giving us a slice of, late Pleistocene, early Holocene, right at the end of the Ice Age, a slice of animal and human history at that time.
The issues about how the horses went extinct here in North America is complex. At the end of the Ice Age, there's a great deal of change that's happening in the environment. And into that, you throw suddenly a new predator on these animals, and that would be humans. Then maybe that tips the scale, just in terms of, being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Only mute bones, scarred by stone cutting tools, speak of his origins and perhaps his extinction. But 11 millennia later, the journey of the North American horse would continue. In 1519, conquistador Hernando Cortés reintroduced the horse to its evolutionary birthplace on the east coast of Mexico. The breed was called the Spanish colonial horse, and it would help shape the destiny of a continent. In 1808, the first white man to cross the Canadian Rockies and enter the Namaya Valley reported meeting Indian warriors on horseback here, riding swiftly across the plateau. Today, not much has changed for the Heniquitine First Nation, who can't remember a time or a life without horses. "250 years after its reintroduction, the Spanish horse had been adopted by First Nation tribes from Texas to Canada. Settlers' horses added to the bloodline, and by the 18th century they numbered in the hundreds of thousands. They called the breed a Mustang, from the Spanish mestina, meaning wild, unbranded horse. Settlers called them feral trespassers who stole grass from their cattle, and in British Columbia alone over 10,000 were killed. But inside the territory of the Heniquitine, about 150 still prevail. Isolated deep in the interior, the land of the Heniquitine is the Brittany Triangle, a rare, pristine ecosystem that has never experienced the effects of logging or mining. Towering above is Mount Silosh, whose legend says that pointing at it will bring a terrible change in the weather.
To us, it's a sanctuary for the wild horses, for the people. It has been the way it is before European contact, and today it's still the same. We always hunted, we always fish, we always food gather, we always prepared for the winter. A lot of our people, use the land, live off the land. Even there's stories of how we used to gather, going to other Chilcotin communities, and I always seem to remember that horses is always part of the Chilcotin, part of the Heniquitine people.
Unlike the beaver or bear, in Canada the wild western horse isn't classed as wild, or even a Mustang, although its origins or genetics have never been studied. But to the people who've lived here for thousands of years, it's one of nature's gifts that helped create one of the last surviving horse cultures in North America.
In the Brittany Triangle, those wild horses are there for us to take when we need it. We use it as transportation. We use it as recreation. Our forefathers before us have used those and trained these wild horses. And these wild horses being part of us is something that we don't want to lose.
Until the first and only road was built in 1973, the only way in or out of the valley was on horseback, a journey that could take a week. Today, ancient horse trails are still the preferred highway, made by the wild Mustangs of the Heni people. Recognized in the United States as an indigenous breed, Mustangs are smaller and lighter in the hindquarter than the modern quarter horse. Marked by long tails and generous forelocks, its Spanish origins are most notable in the convex profile of its Iberian head. Well adapted to life in the wild, the Mustang's historic role in the culture of the Heniquitine has withstood the test of time. The Gymkhana, or horse competition, is a traditional source of recreation and equestrian training for the Heni people and their wild mountain horses. Barrel racing is a popular sport, and the corral, like the baseball diamond or hockey arena, is a common social gathering place. Harry Sita is the warden of the Namaya Aboriginal Nature Reserve and a respected horse trainer who's captured many of the band's current wild stock.
This is a cayuse. It came from the Connie Lake side hill. And I caught him when he was 1 year old. He's 5 years old right today. And look at him. We got a lot of uses for these horses. Horses like a cayuse. We use them for mountains, pack trips, things like that.
It's ironic that Harry would use the word cayuse to describe a native horse. It comes from the Cayuse Indians, a tribe that ceased to exist a long time ago.
The only mechanic you have to do on these horses is just put shoes on them. That's all you do. And no flat tires. You can go 12 hours a day. You don't have to worry about gas or breakdowns. Or these guys just need grass and water. That's about it.
The building of the road has forced a change to the legend of Mount Silosh. Now it's said that if a newcomer points at it, their vehicle will break down. Time is catching up to the Namaya Valley, and a culture rich in tradition and horses.
Our people have been using horses as far as I can remember, all the time. You're talking about moose and deer, that's part of our survival. And anything that happens on the land that affects them will affect us. The same with the wild horses. If something happens to the land that affects them, it's going to affect our livelihood.
The Henigutin may be able to harness their future, but for the wild Mustang, the journey remains precarious, until their legend can become scientific fact. Ranches on the eastern slope of the Rocky Mountains were founded by men on horseback. Cowboy culture is still alive and well here, and celebrated in towns like Dog Pound, Alberta, site of one of the world's oldest rodeos. Like the First Nations of the Great Plains, the first cowboys also rode the Spanish pony called the Mustang. Now the larger American quarter horse is king. But a century ago, it was the wild Mustang who bucked the hardest and drew the crowds. Today, only a few small herds remain, and their place in frontier history almost forgotten.
I learned to ride before I learned to walk. 94 years ago, my mother used to take me with her on the saddle horse, and you know, we had enough wild horses at that time. They were really beautiful. They'd stand on a ridge and they'd watch you. They wasn't afraid because nobody ever bothered them until the meat hunters started chasing them. They wasn't any wilder than the other animals. Now they're the wildest thing in the bush. And pretty well the scarcest too.
The eastern slope is a vast territory of ancient rock and lush valleys, ideal for grazing cattle and horses. Deep in the foothills, Hummingbird Ranch is the home of Slim Davis. Born and raised at a mountain's foot, Slim grew up alongside the Stony and Blackfoot Indians, tribes whose culture flourished with the arrival of the horse. He saw his first Mustang in 1920 and remembers a time when thousands roamed wild and free.
I rode that saddle thousands of miles. I liked it for roping horses because it was good and strong and you don't have to cinch it too tight. I roped a lot of horses with that saddle.
It was a lot easier for Slim to saddle up 80 years ago, but once on, it's still tough to buck him off.
But don't.
Slim's no scientist, but a lifetime in the Rockies has made him a wildlife expert in his own right. And during most of it, he's fought hard to protect the wild Mustang.
Well, rangers don't do anything to protect the wild horses. The government won't either. I'll tell you, I've been to meetings over these here different things. The guys that have the say has never been here. They've never seen it. And yet them's the guys that make the laws.
Like British Columbia, Alberta considers all wild horses to be feral and allowed thousands of them to be killed off. In 1974, Slim convinced the government to outlaw hunting them on public land, but their numbers still declined. And now it's rare for even Slim to see one.
There never was a big bunch of wild horses. There used to be many little bunches. The only natural enemy that wild horses he got is the wild horse hunters. Cougar might kill the odd colt, but not likely. And the wolves just can't get into a pack of wild horses. When there were lots of wild horses, there were lots of mule deer, because when the wolves would bother the deer would run to the horses. So that was just nature's way of doing things.
In man's world, a bighorn mountain ram is worth a small fortune to a trophy hunter. But after fall hunting season is over, goats, deer, and moose are all protected by strict wildlife laws, while the wild horse remains fair game. In the United States, wild horses have been protected since 1959, but here in the heartland of the Canadian West, it's still legal to shoot a wild horse on private land and sell it for dog food.
Well, how come we're still here?
Slim's too old now to take his fight to the government. But like the horse he still champions, he's become a living legend, drawing people to the ranch to listen and learn firsthand his version of rough-hewn natural history.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, Slim, how about a palm?
When you start up a trail on the day you're born, with many a curve and bend, you don't know where to lead you, and you don't know when it'll end. But when you come to the end of the trail, there's nothing there to fear. Your spirit will leave your body, and your spirit will still be here.
Haunted by visions of trails plowed under, today old cowboys can only dream that some things, priceless, will survive the steel wheels of progress.
I'd like to see the wild horses protected, what's left of them. Well, I'd like to see them left anyway, some, you know, because they're not hurting anything, and they got a right to be here. They was here before people was. And these guys say, well, their horses have got away, you know. I know better than that.
In the rodeo or on the range, Slim's ridden with the best of them. His trail may be coming to an end, but at least he knows that somewhere out there the last wild Mustangs still run free. In 1895, a census taken of the Alberta wild horse population counted over 42,000 head. Today, about 300 remain. After running for a century from the pressures of progress, their behavior, like their numbers, has changed dramatically. Extremely sensitive to every sight and sound, they now prefer thick forest cover to graze in rather than the open range. But so far, they've beaten the odds, prevailing over hunters, harsh weather, intense grazing competition, and a high infant mortality rate, conditions that domestic rejects couldn't survive for even a decade. In the lexicon of nature, these are wild horses. They travel in small bands of mares and colts, ruled by a stud horse or stallion. He maintains his band year-round and controls it with an iron will. The band will establish a home range of about 15 square miles and mark it with manure that send a scent warning to rival stallions. The Rockies are the northern limit of wild horse country. Winters are severe, and often the snow is too deep to forage unless a warm Chinook wind decides to blow. Like the male alpha wolf, the stallion is constantly alert, watching for intruders and ready to challenge anything that approaches his harem. But it's an older mare who knows the range well who will actually lead the band away from any threat. Foals are usually born from March to June and can run at the gallop 48 hours after birth, essential to their survival where cougars or grizzlies wait in ambush. Cowboys claim that it's impossible to break a mature wild horse. The only way is to capture them young, at a year or less. In the West, stories are still told of wild horses willing themselves to death after only a few days of being deprived of their freedom. Horses are extremely social animals, but for wild horses in particular, the band is crucial to survival. They keep together to fight off predators or to stay warm in a blizzard. Always there's a sentinel, watching for danger and allowing the rest to graze or sleep in peace. Feral horse, trespass grazer, and wild Mustang are sensitive issues in the Canadian West, where the right to graze cattle on public lands is a jealously guarded asset. Eldon Bruns is a wildlife biologist with the Alberta government. Well versed in horse behavior, he's uncomfortable calling them wild, like the elk, wolf, or grizzly he's observed here for the past 20 years.
We've got around 300 head of horses. It probably has been up to 1,000 in the past. So the government is trying to maintain them roughly at that level for the last several years. If an area seems to be increasing, they will allow ranchers, outfitters, cowboys that are interested, they will allow them a permit for a designated area to come in and catch wild horses.
The government's mandate here has never been to define the terms wild or feral. It's politics and money. Every year, large tracts of public grassland are leased to the cattle industry, and grass eaten by a wild horse is that much less to feed the insatiable appetite of 100,000 head of beef. The ecological impact of 300 wild horses seems small, but they still create a big problem. Under pressure from both ranchers and conservationists like Slim Davis, Alberta now tolerates small bands of horses on public land, but remains indifferent to proving that they could be a natural treasure.
As far as tracing their genetics back to the original Spanish Mustangs, there probably is a little trace in there, but it'll be pretty thin. But all the horses in the wild horses in Alberta should technically be called feral horses. They're horses that were at some stage domesticated, released. There are several generations out here now probably that haven't been handled by man, but the original stock was definitely introduced.
The question is, who introduced it? A rancher or a conquistador? Since the West was opened, Though the number of wild horses has dwindled drastically, it has never completely vanished. Historically, the bloodline can still be traced unbroken from 16th century Mexico to present-day Alberta as one genetic heritage. But since no one has ever genetically tested a wild horse in the Canadian West, no one really knows for sure. Like the old Hollywood Westerns, the Mustang is still part fact and part fiction. Dwayne Papke has been a mountain guide and outfitter for over 30 years. He's a new breed of cowboy and runs a successful ranch for tourists near Banff, Alberta's famous national park.
Come on, boys. Come on, boys. Come on, boys. Come on.
Every summer, people from around the world come here to experience the lifestyle of the Old West. A big part of the draw are the elusive bands of wild horses who found refuge in the remote backcountry. Like a lot of modern cowboys, Dwayne's skeptical of their Spanish origins, but he can't deny their important role in his own Western heritage and his business.
I have a great love for the wild horses. It is adrenaline pump to see that animal in the wild, free, and fighting the elements to exist, and which carries on today. You'll go through a valley where you might see 50 to 60 head of these wild horses, and they're just a little different bunches. To me, that is one of the greatest views that you want to set your eyes on.
Dwayne's backyard is known as the Yahatinda Ranch region, most of it remote, unspoiled public land, ideal for wild horses.
There's a few more people in the area besides myself. We felt that these numbers of the wild horses should be maintained to where we have this value of taking people out to see these wild horses. You look at some areas with easy access, we find that the numbers dwindle in them areas a lot faster than the more areas that are rugged and hard to get at.
The Yahatinda is a designated wilderness preserve, and the only grazing competition for wild horses here are other wild animals like the elk. Ironically, it too is a reintroduced animal, but strictly protected. "30 years on this range has made Dwayne one of the best horse trackers in the business, and when he finds unshod footprints, he can usually follow them right to the source.
It's just a 4-year-old stud. He's all by himself. The reason he come in to look at us is here as we spooked him off of the flat. Being by himself, he's pretty leery of us.
Moving slow and careful, Dwayne follows the young stud's trail. He could be part of a band of bachelors driven from their herds by the dominant stallion until they're older and strong enough to assert their right to breed. Soon enough, he's proven right. High on a hill is a rare sight, a band of young stallions. But instead of running for cover, they stand and watch Dwayne approach. They seem intrigued by his whistling, and quite possibly have heard it before. By nature, these animals are extremely nervous, especially of man. and only the stallion will dare approach an intruder to learn whether they are friend or foe. It's a rare moment for these horses, too. This is a human who poses no threat. Both the ancient and reintroduced wild horse evolved as a prairie dweller, using speed of foot as their primary survival mechanism. One false move, and they're gone, in a flash. In Dwayne's words, it's adrenaline pumping to see a horse running free in the wild, but even in this remote backcountry, band sizes are decreasing, and horses harder to find.
In Alberta here, through the wild horses and the existence of the wild horses for all these years, we feel that there could be a sanctuary set up just for these horses. To me, it's a forefather system back through heritage, and to me, my grandchildren and the future grandchildren of other people that have a love for a horse should see these running in the wild. And the wishing that they have a good future is how I look at it.
Dwayne even has a name for his wild mountain sanctuary. In an upland meadow at the headwaters of a glacier-fed stream, a place called Wild Horse Creek. But for the wild Mustangs of Alberta, getting there may be a long time coming. A 1,000 miles due east of the Rocky Mountains, in the heart of the Canadian prairies, lives a very special horse. Shandy is a 25-year-old Spanish Mustang. In 1976, her mother was captured in foal, not far from Dwayne Papke's ranch, and 6 months later, Shandy was born. She now belongs to Steve Howlett, whose farm is located in Dugald, Manitoba, about as far as you can get from the wild horse's home range, and a lot safer. Shandy was a horse with a will of her own when Steve first acquired her.
Ain't nothing here gonna hurt you.
Although born and raised in captivity, the wild mountain life seemed bred into her genes, and it took hard work and a lot of patience to win her trust.
And the first thing I remember about her was the fact that, oh my God, she's so small. My boss, an old cowboy, came up and he said, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "Well, look at her." He smiled at me and he says, "You know, you're going to wear the seat of your pants out before you wear her out." She was tough as nails. I think he's a little upset without you. Hey, honey.
Steve Howlett, it turns out, is as unique as his horse. In the United States, scientists have genetically tested wild horses extensively and found Spanish DNA in at least 3 herds. But in Canada, only Steve Howlett has spent the time and money to test a single wild horse, Shandy.
She had the same pattern as all of the sulfur horses from Utah, most of the Tigers from Oregon, and most of the registered Spanish Mustangs in the States. They all have the same Iberian pattern that modern horses don't have.
Sir.
Once he'd confirmed and registered Shandy's Mustang bloodline, Howlett began a one-man breeding program. Hoping to preserve his horse's unique pedigree, he recently brought another registered Spanish Mustang to the farm, an American stallion called Silvertip. For his small size, the stallion is extremely jealous of his mare and takes exception to any show of interest, even if a fence divides him from his rivals. The standoff is frustrating for Silvertip. He'd like to see his competitors running for the hills, but that won't happen here. These Mustangs are far from the fields of freedom. What's even more frustrating is having only one lonesome mare to bully around, instead of an entire harem.
In a lot of cases, a horse is a horse. A lot of their behavior is the same. There is kind of some peculiarities about Spanish Mustangs.
Hey, Mama, how you doing, huh?
There was a saying that not all Spanish Mustangs are wild, and not all wild horses are Spanish Mustangs.
How you doing, hon? How you today? Huh?
A lot are ranch bred now, but they're not housed in barns. They retain the toughness, they retain their wild instincts that way. Silvertip was brought up to perpetuate her line. We're hoping for 1, 2, if we're really lucky, maybe three foals off her, that we can keep this uniquely Canadian line intact. And the more we have, the broader the genetics, the greater chance of survival these horses have.
So far, not a single scientific body has expressed interest in Howlett's one-man genetic study. And although he's fought hard to protect the wild Mustang, she goes unrecognized in Canada. Today, Shandy is a mature 25, old for a horse, older still for a broodmare, and the odds of Silvertip breeding with her successfully are slim at best.
She's the only horse from a Canadian wild herd that is registered with any of the Spanish Mustang or Spanish colonial registries anywhere. Shandy is the only living proof we have that these horses are descended from Spanish horses, that there is something special in the Rockies of Alberta and quite possibly in the Rockies of British Columbia. In the States, they seem to take great pride in the Western heritage that these horses show now. In Canada, we ignore them. I'd really hate to think that you would be the last Spanish Mustang that we have in Canada.
What if the ancient horse of North America had not become extinct 11,000 years ago? What would it look like? And would it still be wild or free? The answer may lie in its ancestors and their descendants, who now roam the world, including the new North America. Here, the wild horse called Mestina maintains a precarious hold on survival, a paradoxical symbol of freedom in a changing world. But wherever man lives on the planet, our treatment of wild horses echoes our response to all species of wildlife. And despite laws, or the lack of them, the saga continues at the horse's expense. No other creature has affected man's imagination, entered his soul, and captured his heart as much as the horse. For these reasons alone, we can't afford to lose any of them.
What do you hear in the lonely howl of the wolf? Does it send a cold shiver down your spine or raise your spirits as only the call of the wild can? Myth, fable, and blatant lies plague the wolf like no other species. No more controversial animal lives. None is so hated. None so misunderstood. In the wilderness or in our living rooms, the howl of the wolf speaks to us in many ways. Yet rarely do we listen. Deep in the Canadian heartland, a modern-day drama between two of the world's greatest predators is taking place on a stage of unrivaled natural beauty. Algonquin Park is one of the largest and oldest wilderness parks in North America. Located in a transition zone between northern coniferous and southern hardwood forests, a startling diversity of over 1,000 plants, 270 birds, and 40 mammals has evolved here. Observing wolves in the wild is a rare experience. Highly social, superbly intelligent, and extremely cautious, they're seldom seen, but often heard. Michael Runce was 3 years old when he first visited Algonquin Park. 40 years later, his childhood fascination has become a lifelong passion.
Wolves are sort of one of the target species that I was really after when I started work here in 1972. And the very first time I met a wolf was by its voice, as is the standard way to meet wolves here in Algonquin Park. And it was a nice dark night. We were tracking wolves, trying to locate wolves by foot. We walked up this wonderful Portash trail into the dark night, and there it was, a howling from the distant lake shore. That experience was really moving, you know, hearing the first wild wolf of my life. And that was to be repeated many times in the years to come. Over those years, I've been supposedly working, but really just enjoying myself. This park is a phenomenal park. It's one of these places that is unique for its feel.
Algonquin Park has no towering mountains or deep whitewater canyons. Its appeal lies in a simple, accessible bond between people and nature. For many, it's the site of their first canoe trip, their first sighting of a moose or deer, their first symphony of wolf howls by starlight. But the park is wild, complex, and fragile, a place that takes a lifetime to know intimately. To most park visitors, the true face of nature remains invisible behind an indomitable wall of wilderness. It's just there, naturally. But not to John and Mary Theberge. They too have spent a lifetime in the park, learning the lexicon of its most indomitable animal.
My relationship with Algonquin wolves began by chance when I was assigned to a wolf biologist named Douglas Pimod, who worked for the then Ontario Department of Lands and Forests when I was in grade 13. We knew nothing about ecology of wolves. We were starting at sort of square one. He wasn't keen on getting into radiotelemetry, which we've used extensively, and found out a lot about wolves from the technology was young then and uncertain. So we used howling to try to find wolves, and I canoed the park twice over at night. It's only in recent years I've seen a lot of these lakes, howling at them, conducting census work.
Our first experience was just shortly after we were married. And John suggested that we come for a canoe trip up to Algonquin Park, and I naively said, well, do we have a tent? He said, no. I said, well, where will we sleep? Well, under the canoe will be fine if it rains. So as it happened, it did rain during the night, and the sleeping bag was completely wet. Fog came in and just blanketed the whole area. In the morning when we got up, you couldn't see anything, but we did give a howl and had a response from some wolves and decided to paddle out to where the response came from. And gradually the fog did lift. And lo and behold, just above us on the rock, 3 wolves appeared. Well, I guess I could have had my walking papers at that point and left the marriage, but I didn't. It was the most exhilarating experience I had. It was my introduction to wolves. And 37 years later, I'm still here in the game. People see the wolf as a thing of beauty, and they have a reverence for it. To them, it is a part of a wilderness that's dying and no longer is to be found everywhere in this country. And for them, this song of the wilderness, the song of the wolf, has a lot of meaning.
Established in 1893, Algonquin Park is renowned for its lush wilderness and diverse wildlife. The lord of this jungle is the wolf, North America's premier land predator. The wolf is considered a keystone species, maintaining the wild, natural balance by regulating the populations of all other species.
There it is, very faint. Go to the bend in the road there and maybe try for the antenna.
John and Mary Theberge have spent the last 14 years studying Algonquin's wolf population.
There you go.
Although they rarely see one, they know more about the wolves here than anyone else in the world. By tracking radio-collared animals, they can analyze movement patterns and ultimately wolf behavior, most of it hidden behind the facade of thick forests.
Do you have a bearing on it?
Just a minute. It's faint, so it's not going to be a great bearing. But $275.
You're getting some movement then, because it was louder when we first got here.
Well, maybe, but the signal's pretty steady. It's almost up the road, because the road curves.
To study wolves, a good place to start is at the beginning, the den site.
It looks like the jack pine pack's been using this area again this year. Okay, it looks like it's been used. You can see the claw marks on the side. See these claw marks over here? These are new from last year.
That whole area is new. That's dug back in there. Have you got a flashlight?
I do.
And there's more claw marks.
Oh, look at the way that's all crumbly. That.
You see on the right-hand side, there's 2 sort of dents in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
They could be pup tracks too. Real soft ground.
Something has used it, because usually there's a lot more debris and cobwebs that hang down, and that's all being cleared off.
Well, it's a really good den site. Good one to use again. Sandy soil, easy digging. It's high on a south-facing slope.
Actually, when you look at the trails, they're like a spoke coming in on a wheel. They're definitely coming into a central place, and they're more used than they were last year.
The Thaberges have a close relationship with their wolves and have given each pack a name. This den used to belong to the Hardwood pack, which was killed after it strayed outside the park. The Jack Pine pack quickly moved in, extending its own territory in a very unnatural way.
The bottom line with the Hardwood pack is it paid the price of having half its territory in the park and some outside the park, like so many packs have. It went outside the park and was killed, so we lost a whole pack. In a social animal like this, the experience of a female in raising young is important in its success. So in the Algonquin population, females get 1, maybe 2 chances at being breeding females, and then they're dead.
After a decade of research, the Thaberges concluded that Algonquin's wolf population was plummeting to dangerously low levels due to merciless hunting outside the park. Their conclusions created a controversy over the protection of wolves, but it was only the beginning. In 1998, after several more years of genetic analysis, they made an amazing discovery.
One of the really big surprises in our research, which we thought was a study of the gray wolf, is that that's not the wolf that's here at all. To everybody's surprise, the genetics results discovered that we really have been studying the red wolf, not the gray wolf. There's 2 species of wolves in the world, both live in North America, the red wolf and the gray wolf. The red wolf was thought to live only, well, it lived only in eastern North America, supposedly from about the southeast, from Virginia south to Florida. Gray wolves inhabited the rest of North America. But red wolves became extinct in the wild in about 1965 or 1970. There's only 1 wild red wolf population. It was reintroduced at great expense by the U.S. government in North Carolina, some captive stock. So this looks like a species about to go out of existence, and to everybody's surprise, we suddenly find another population of it, and it's here in Algonquin Park.
The Thaberges' discovery of a rare wolf species, not even supposed to exist in Canada, was viewed with suspicion due to their controversial opinions about the declining wolf numbers in the park. Even Michael Runce wasn't convinced at first.
In the early years, we always wondered why the animals here were so small and more brightly colored. I've seen wolves in northern Ontario, and they're quite a bit different looking. They're bigger and more gray. And finally, when I began to really analyze what was being written about the red wolf situation and the DNA results, then I finally came to the conclusion that, yeah, that they're right, that these are red wolves.
Almost overnight, Algonquin Park had become a fortress for one of the world's rarest animals. But could even a park protect it?
There's not many ways to get around the park apart from on foot or by canoe. But that's the beauty of the park. It's got this great network of lakes and rivers and streams, and you can paddle almost anywhere. Now, of course, there are some carry points, some portages to deal with, but they aren't that bad. And actually, it's kind of fun carrying an 80-pound canoe and your camera gear over a 2-kilometer portage. It's good for you.
Algonquin Park is laced with 1,600 kilometers of canoe routes, and Michael Runce has probably traveled on every one as a leading park naturalist and photographer. Wherever there's a beaver pond, it's a good bet you'll find wolves prowling for a snack. Of all animals other than the wolf, the beaver has the most powerful impact on this ecosystem. Throughout Algonquin, there are thousands of beaver ponds, which create habitats for a lot of other animals. The ponds, for example, support water plants which are high in sodium and a favorite food of the moose. But with so many beavers around, without the wolf to regulate their population, Algonquin Park could become one gigantic beaver pond. And with the decline in the park's deer population, the beaver has become a major new food source for the declining wolf population. To study one of nature's most elusive animals, wolf scat has become an important research tool for John and Mary Thaberge.
There's 2 scats here.
Scat is another form of communication. To scientists, it tells a tale of current or changing eating habits. To wolves, animals who live in a world mapped out by scent, it marks their territory.
Yeah. This one's older than the other one, and there's quite a bit of coarse hair in there. Could be the deer or moose.
Yeah, I don't see any beaver in it.
The other one looked like it could have some beaver. Well, it was, but this one seems far coarser than a beaver hair would be.
Yeah.
Well, there are no tracks on the road either, so. Okay. We collect about 1,000 scats a year, and from that we can analyze what the wolves are eating. Their diet consists of approximately 1/3 beaver, 1/3 moose, 1/3 deer. This has been different from the 1960s, where the diet was primarily 80% deer.
Wolves defecate not just for the normal purposes, but they also mark their territories with the scats. That's why we left part of the scat there, because if we didn't, we would take away this territorial marking. Other wolves come along and realize the territory's occupied.
That olfactory sac is 14 times larger than ours, and some behaviorists have estimated that their sense of smell then is developed 100 times more than ours. So that offers a whole spectrum to them that we don't have. It can read a whole story into the scent path of various animals.
The optimum prey is deer. Deer sort of jerk the wolves around the most. When the deer migrate, the wolves won't migrate with them. It's the energy package about maximum, optimum for them in terms of energy expended versus energy gained back, whereas beaver are only eaten in large numbers when deer are low numbers, unavailable, because they spend a lot of energy and only get a small amount back. Whereas moose are more formidable prey, and they probably will hunt and maybe chase and surround and test a lot more moose before they'll get one successfully than they do a deer.
Algonquin wolves do eat more beaver than most other wolves, but deer remains their primary food source. Hunting in packs, they prey on older or weaker animals, which are easier to hunt down. And when they do, their legacy as the world's most ruthless land predator is easy to understand. This young deer was torn apart in only a few hours. By the time the pack moved on, only bits of fur and fragments of bone remained. Nothing was wasted.
Got some really fresh wolf droppings over here. Probably no more than a day old at most, if that. It still looks wet actually where they urinated too around them. So there is a wolf not too far away. Maybe up here somewhere.
The highly organized social structure of the wolf pack is key to hunting the largest of all the prey animals. Weighing in at over half a ton, it takes the combined energy of the entire pack to bring down a moose. In autumn, moose leave the sanctuary of wetlands behind to begin the annual rut. Exposed on dry land and hampered by thick underbrush, they become easier prey.
It's early October now. There's a beautiful frost on the plants this morning. Nice mist over the water. There has been a pack of wolves around for a couple of days back in the valley somewhere over there. This time of year they still do use rendezvous sites, but they also travel to kills more regularly too with the pups. And by the sounds of the ravens squawking over there, there has to be a kill. This is why that pack of wolves was around here. There's not much left. In fact, they're chewing on the bones for the marrow content. There's all kinds of signs around here of a great struggle, broken off branches and a fairly large sapling smashed right down. Wolves don't kill and then waste their food and go off and kill something else. When they kill an animal like a moose, they stay and they feast on it for days. And this animal here fed not only wolves, but ravens and perhaps fisher, marten, even a fox. A lot of things benefit from a wolf-killed animal.
No one else in the world has collected as much comprehensive wolf research as John and Mary Thaberge. Their most important tool is the radio collar. But before they can track this elusive predator, who can see, hear, and smell much better than humans, they have to catch them.
We have to approach the animal very quietly and very cautiously, not for fear for ourselves, but because we don't want the animal disturbed. We don't want the animal to be too frightened. We don't want this. It's a harrowing experience for it, being trapped, being caught, and having humans approach, because most humans kill them when they're in this situation. Now, we could go up to it with a syringe and sedate it, but again, we find that the animal is so frightened of us that it develops a lot of anxiety behavior and begins jumping and trying to get away. So John will try to divert it, and I will approach it with a poke stick that's about 6 feet long, and it doesn't even notice this poke stick, and I close the syringe and inject it with the drug.
We trap these animals, we do them with humane traps that are made for research with offset jaws and padded jaws and all the rest of it, and take all sorts of care not to damage these animals. When you catch them and you have at your feet an animal when they're in a trap, they're totally afraid. They're never aggressive. They're totally afraid. And there you have this animal laying, that your vision of wilderness, the animal you respect, and you reduced it to the lying in front of you, drugged out. It's very emotional, very difficult. It's not been a pleasant part of the research for us, but it's been a necessity.
At that point, the next thing we do is put on the collar. We make sure the collar's working. We note the frequency, and we attach the collar to it, making sure that we have enough room that the animal, if it's swallowing a whole chunk of meat, isn't going to be choked by the meat, so there's enough room for the meat to slide down. But at the same time, the collar can't be so loose that it's going to be able to bring it up over its head. We measure the animal, and we look for any injuries, we look for disease, we look for mange. The animal's 282. And then finally we weigh the wolf before we let it go. And after that we can track it both from the ground and from the air.
We've radio collared 173 wolves, and there's only one other study in the world that's radio collared that many wolves. Radio collaring is absolutely essential to know where they are in the forest, because you just can't find them and track them any other way.
Everything that you see in this park is an interconnected web. Each species adds a harmonious part to another species. It's like working with a watch. If you were to take a watch and take various parts out and then gradually put it back together, that watch wouldn't work in the same way. And to us, this wilderness is like that. If you were to take one aspect out of it, the whole park wouldn't have the same feeling. It would still be there, would function, but you wouldn't feel the same way about it.
Often the wolves may be traveling a couple of kilometers away, and we may think of them as single wolves out there, but they're actually in touch with each other. They know where each other are. Their trails may braid back and forth now and again. They're really hunting as one unit. And then vocal communication is something that has really intrigued us over the years. Each individual wolf has its own signature in it in terms of the harmonic overtones. So wolves have differences, just like you could identify two different singing humans singing the same song. You know the different person, you identify them on the basis of their harmonic overtones. Wolves have their own harmonic overtones. But most interesting is we discovered that the wolf's ear, its ability to differentiate these overtones, is much more sensitive than the human ear. So they know when they hear a howl, whether it's a member of their own pack or whether it's some other wolf from another pack.
We have found that when two wolves have been giving the same resonant deep howls but haven't been together and eventually do come together, if one is a subordinate animal, it'll change the howl that's it's eliciting to a far more treble, timorous howl and not have the resonant tones in it. We found that when a wolf is killed, that the other animals grieve for it. We call this a mourn howl. It definitely descends in scale and has a very, very definitive sound of its own.
It's always fresh and always exciting to hear that voice of the wilderness. We still want turn off our science thinking sometimes and just sit there quietly and watch the, you know, the moonlight across the water and just listen to it.
It is the wolf that makes Algonquin Park wild. It reminds us of our own roots as the greatest predator of the wilderness. Nature's harshest rules are rarely seen by visitors to the park. Neither are the unforgiving laws of the men who made it. Until 1958, wolves inside its boundaries were hunted almost to extinction by the park's own wardens. Even here, the perception of raw, untamed nature is not the reality. The park itself was created by lumber barons, and for over a century, logging within its boundaries has never stopped. Hunting is also allowed in about 40% of the park's territory, although the wolf is not one of the hunted. But outside the park, wolves are still killed indiscriminately. As they track prey animals into the surrounding farmlands, old attitudes still prevail. The only good wolf is a dead wolf, even if it's a red wolf, one of the rarest animals on Earth.
In this population, one of the most important discoveries of the research is that the main cause of death is humans. Close to 70% are caused by humans. And this is a park where they're supposed to be protected.
Oh, there, that's a really good signal.
More than half this population, which is about 150 wolves in late winter, spend some time outside the park. Outside the park, there are no game laws whatsoever to prevent their killing. People can kill them in any amount, in any time, anywhere, and not even report the kill.
Are you getting it to the left or to the right of the water?
Straight towards it. There are people that are killing wolves out there just because they hate them. The fur isn't worth anything. They just leave the carcasses in the bush and feel they've done a social service by getting rid of a wolf.
When the European colonizers first came to North America, they came from Europe with the attitude that wolves were evil. They were the manifest evil. And so they tried to eliminate them because they were their competitor. Oh, it's a small animal.
It hasn't decomposed. Surprising considering the warmth.
Look at the tail.
It's got mange.
Basically, Ontario has the laxest laws for protecting wolves anywhere in North America or in the world apart from Russia. As far as killing wolves, you don't need to have anything but a small game license. A landowner can kill them in any amount at any time of year without any bag limit. And the same goes for a person with a small game license. You have to have a license for killing a bear, you have to have a license for killing a moose, a deer, even a raccoon. Can we not give the wolf the same amount of respect as we are for the rest of the animals within this system?
Why is it that we love to hate the wolf, and at the same time we're drawn by its lonely howl? Every year in late August, hundreds of people travel to the park for a late-night wolf howl. It's a sign that attitudes may be changing.
If wolves don't answer back, it does not mean that wolves are not here. It means they could be here and they're choosing not to answer back, or they have been here today, they're off hunting, and may come back later on this evening.
no matter if the howl is held on the side of a busy highway or if it's held on a very quiet back road in the park, it doesn't matter. It's the sound of the animal that really ties the people to the wilderness that the park really supports. It's a mythical animal. It's an animal that people still fear and misunderstand. So to have a chance of going somewhere and actually hearing a wolf howl, that is a really big thrill for most people.
Twice on howls right here, we had a wolf come out. We actually heard it walking in the woods beside us, and it came up between the cars as we were leaving. Twice we saw a wolf from this very site.
Outside the park, there still remains a fairly strong anti-wolf sentiment. And that certainly, I think, has been softened over the last few decades by the park's public wolf howl program. Not only is it educating people, but it's showing local people that the wolves are a major draw, and that means an economic gain for them if they are smart about it.
If you consider the wolf as a beautiful animal, it's the distillate of wilderness. It lifts your spirits. You have an empathy with that animal. Also, it is a reflection on how comfortable we are with the wilderness. If you're comfortable of being out there in the darkness and you hear that sound, to you it's almost a communion with nature. If you're not comfortable with being in the wilderness, if you're frightened of the dark, if you're frightened of what's out there, then that is a harrowing sound. It's a harrowing experience.
Spring is a time of rebirth in the wilderness. As the snow melts, animals awaken from their long winter's night to feast once again on the bounty of a new day. As winter gives way to spring, the residue of nature's most unforgiving season is revealed. A young wolf, too small and weak to survive the harsh cold, like many of the myths about Algonquin Park, is not what it appears to be.
No, it doesn't have any broken ribs. Doesn't have any broken legs, and basically no skeletal injuries on this side.
No, it looks fairly intact. The head is all intact, the head area here.
It's got lots of flesh on its shoulders. I don't think it's starved.
Look at that nose. Now that is not a wolf nose. That's a coyote nose. And these animals are losing a lot of their genetic integrity. This animal is far more coyote-like than wolf-like.
And yet it's an Algonquin Park wolf, even though it's died out in the farmland, and it's the future of the Algonquin Park wolf population. It's hard to think of this being an efficient predator on moose. It's just too small. In the years of our study, in just 14 years, the percent of females less than 50 pounds is statistically greater, so the animals are getting smaller. Skull sizes are shrinking as well. And genetically, the geneticists tell us of the genetic evidence that there's an increase in, using a genetics term, coyote-type haplotypes in the population rather than wolf-type. That's increased 30% since 1960, so that's pretty frightening. So what we're seeing here is the genetic erosion of the Algonquin wolf.
That tail's a little frozen. Rigidity.
Just get the hips in. I can't hold it much longer.
Okay.
So he spent a life the short life we've known him, crossing an awful lot of roads and around a fair amount of settlement, which is more coyote-like than wolf-like.
Well, he's come a fair ways from Mud Turtle Lake.
A third of the population dies every year. The recruitment back into the population of young animals is about 21%. You model that in any population model, as we have with other scientists, and it shows extinction of the population within a very few decades. So it's very clear that if the levels of human mortality continue in Algonquin Park as they have in the past, this population is going to go down the tube. And as it goes down the tube, it's not just this population, it's a distinct species of mammal. I mean, we who provide expertise to all the other countries in the world on managing wildlife, we think we're so enlightened and so on. Are we going to stand back and let a major mammal species go extinct? Now, unless something's done in Algonquin Park, our prediction from our research is that's what's going to happen.
John and Mary Theberge are leaving Algonquin Park for the last time. Their research is complete, and although their conclusions have stirred up a controversy, subsequent studies have all supported their bottom line. The wolf of Algonquin is the purest genetic form of red wolf in the world, and on the brink of extinction. In North America, there has never been a documented case of wolves hunting and killing a human being. Yet no more controversial animal lives. None is more misunderstood. What do you hear in the howl of the wolf? Is it the haunting song of the wild, or your worst nightmare? Either way, today its howl has changed to a whimper, and before it falls completely silent, we should all listen more carefully.
Industrious, efficient, monogamous, and definitely eager. The Canadian beaver is cutting down forests from one end of the planet to the other. From the southern tip of South America to the barrens of the high Arctic, the incredible legacy of nature's super engineer is alive, thriving, and still wreaking havoc wherever it goes. With a dexterous front end engineered for land and powerful hind feet webbed for water, the Canadian beaver is well designed to bridge two worlds, where water meets boreal forest. A landscape architect capable of building itself a home that is a predator-proof bunker, the Beaver Lodge is an ecological marvel. The door is underwater, keeping enemies out and warm air in. Safe and snug inside, they live in tight-knit families that can include up to 8 children. No other animal on Earth builds anything like this. It is the beaver's edge, enabling it to colonize a hemisphere. Of all nature's creations, only coral and man have had a greater impact on our planet. For 30 million years, beaver-like animals have thrived in the Northern Hemisphere. Paleontologist Dick Harrington knows this giant well, the largest beaver species the world has ever known.
The giant beaver originated about 3 million years ago. It developed in size, of course. This is probably the equivalent of a black bear in size. You can see, how big that is. And that if you had a black bear standing on its haunches, it probably wouldn't be very different from what we see here.
The beaver of today and yesterday are built on fundamentally the same body type. The modern beaver is only smaller, except for its tail.
With the modern beaver, it has a very wide spatulate tail, and when it slaps the water, it's an alarm signal, but probably an animal of this size wouldn't need such a big alarm signal. I think it would be more alarming in itself.
The giant beaver died out 10,000 years ago, but the search continues for the ancestor of all beavers.
There is probably a common ancestor. It begins with Dipoides here, this really small beaver that we found on Ellesmere Island about 3.5 million years ago.
To search for the origins of the Canadian beaver, Dick Harrington has traveled almost as far as the North Pole. Here, 1,500 kilometers above the modern tree line, a super beaver once thrived.
Well, we're on Ellesmere Island, and we're about 78 degrees 30 minutes latitude north, so this is really the high Arctic. And it's kind of mind-boggling to find remains of a beaver pond at this site. And of course, it is not a modern one. The environment was a lot warmer when these animals were living around here, which is about 3.5 million years old, maybe 3 to 4 million years old.
The wood that Dick's excavating is over 3 million years old, but it burns as if it were cut yesterday. Prehistoric beavers built a dam here. Locked in permafrost for a small eternity, it provides a window into the beaver's ancient past.
Probably about 7 or 8 inches in, you run into frozen ground. It's not too deeply lodged in there. I don't think it's moving a bit. Yeah, there it comes. Oh yeah, this is great because you can see the beaver cutting right across here. You never know what the hell you're going to get in the next shovelful. You know, that's the most exciting part of paleontology, in my opinion. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, I found a fragment of a beaver tooth, and it came from just back here behind me yesterday. So it's nice to know there's still some fossils in there. You always hope as a paleontologist to find unique and interesting and scientifically important specimens, and this has about all of those characters.
Along with the shark, the beaver is one of the few survivors of an evolutionary era 30 million years in the making. And although both the Canadian and European subspecies have evolved, only the Canadian has maintained the ability to build lodges and dams, changed the course of man's own history, and transformed entire continents. Nestled between the Rocky Mountain foothills and the Great Plains of central Alberta, Elk Island National Park is a rectangle of green amidst endless fields of grain. It's an ideal home for the beaver. Elk Island is home to the highest year-round concentrations of ungulates, or large hoofed mammals on Earth. Per square kilometer, there are more animals with hooves here than on Africa's Serengeti Plain. Elk Island is unique, a completely closed park system. It's fenced off from the outside world to make sure that bison and elk don't venture onto surrounding highways and cattle don't wander in. Set aside in 1906 to protect the last wild elk on the prairies, it's a perfect environment for the beaver's greatest admirers to study nature's superhero.
My personal history with beaver goes back to my childhood. I grew up adjacent to a beaver colony, a whole pond system maintained and structured by beaver. And that's where I spent my childhood, was associating with the beaver in those colonies. And coming to Elk Island was kind of like going back to that. The region is called the Beaver Hills because it had historically a very high population of beaver. People often refer to the beaver as being a very industrious engineer in the landscape, and in fact they are. When you compare their behavior to a land-dwelling species like the bison, for instance, they're totally different. A bison moves into this system, he has to seek out forage, consume it, and then move on and seek out more forage. Well, the beaver don't do that. They bring the forage to themselves. They create situations where they gather large quantities of woody material back to a central communal spot. And it takes a tremendous amount of effort and ingenuity on their part sometimes. That's totally unlike most other species, especially large mammal species.
Beavers use their ingenuity to change the world with their ponds, which they don't find but create by flooding narrow streams with amazing dams. Glynis Hood is a biologist studying the impact of beavers on the park, and she's as eager as they are.
This is an incredible structure. There are no other animals in the wild that you'll see that can create something like this. This is just a civil engineering feat that they've done here. The dams create this moat around the castle, and it's home for the whole colony. Now, how they build these things is just amazing, because they choose an area in the stream where it's usually the narrowest spot so that they don't have to put as much effort in as if it was a long breach in the stream. And they'll often start on the edge of the stream that has the least amount of current. And they'll put down some willows, they'll carry them over in their mouth, they'll go down and they'll pack them down either with rocks, which they carry in their hands, or with mud.
These branches aren't simply rammed into the stream bank. This beaver is also a super weaver. They build a dam by literally knitting willow branches together, layer upon layer, until an intricate barrier is created.
When you get a stream like this where there's not much water pressure against the dam or there's not a lot of stream flow, they often will seal it right tight with mud. But when you get dams in faster flowing streams, they'll actually allow some water to trickle through so that it doesn't erode the dam completely. So they'll actually accommodate the dam to what kind of current you have behind it.
In Elk Island, retreating Ice Age glaciers left behind subtle hills and bowls, ideal for the beaver to transform narrow streams into a network of ponds. New water on the land means more new growth, more food for the ungulates, and a lot more.
Everything that lives here relies upon the presence of a beaver pond in one way or the other. The park has a tremendously rich avifauna resource. 220 some different bird species either live or pass through here, most of which associated at one time or another with a wetland like this. And it's critical to the survival of just about everything that lives within Elk Island National Park.
The beaver is known as a keystone species, an animal capable of affecting entire ecosystems. In Elk Island, they've created new wetlands, inspiring a vast diversity of vegetation to grow. They've also opened up the forest canopy by cutting down trees. And they've created areas where many species of amphibians and fish can thrive. In all, the beaver's energetic re-engineering activities create a more diverse, densely populated, and healthy ecosystem.
Actually, if I were to design the perfect animal, I'd design the beaver, to tell you the truth. Because the things that this animal has going for it to live in the environment that it does are just incredible. Like when you look at the beaver's teeth, you see this orange enamel on the front, which is very, very hard. And then underneath the tooth is a lot softer material. The back part of the tooth wears down faster than the front part, so that it's very, very sharp all the time, so you end up with this chisel-like feature that allows it to chew through wood really well. Now, being an aquatic animal, they've got a couple of things that they've adapted. They can be underwater for up to 15 minutes. They have a specially adapted respiratory system. And when they submerge, their nose and their ears have valves in them that shut them off so that they can't get water in there. Also, their lips are actually behind their teeth, so that when they chew underwater, they don't get water rushing down into their throat. With their eyes, they have a third eyelid that can go over to protect their eyes from the water. And they're very, very streamlined to the water, and then they've got this wonderful tail that acts like a rudder and a warning device for them. So they're just perfectly designed for what they're made to do.
But all that super beaver really wants is to eat a tree in peace. And that can mean taking down 200 of them a year. Yet beavers don't actually like the taste of wood. It's the bark they're after, with a side order of branches and leaves. The rest is used as construction material or simply left where it fell.
Yeah, this is a great example of one of the larger trees. You can see that it's already over 50 centimeters in diameter that they've knocked this tree down. And just like a woodworker with his chisel, the beavers knock out these wood chips that are just, actually, if you put it next to my hand, they're actually very large. And as you can see, there's teeth marks all throughout the stump, and basically a small rodent is able to take down a tree that's absolutely massive. Because not only are they going for food, but if beaver don't chew wood and chew trees, their teeth continually grow, and they actually get to the point where they can't chew at all and they'll die. So chewing is a way to keep them alive as well.
These lumberjacks of the wild run a family business. Parents and their children, called kits, work closely to gather food for their daily diet or to stockpile for the winter ahead. A single lodge can contain up to 12 beavers, and tonight is a rare glimpse of the whole family at work.
Tonight we've counted at least 8 beaver, if not 9, from all age ranges. There's ones that were just born this year and emerged in July, and the adults, and they're just gathering up food for the fall and to put into their food cache. It's just great.
Once they were slaughtered almost to extinction, but the super beaver has risen again to become, at least here, a superhero. And now it's the park's only chance against an upcoming catastrophe. In the 18th and 19th centuries, European fur traders had an insatiable appetite for Canadian beaver pelts. The two-tone qualities of a shiny, durable outer layer with a soft felt underside made it an industry favorite. So when Europeans opened up the New World, it was in search of beavers.
Now what's even more amazing in Elk Island is that during the fur trade in the 1850s, by the 1850s actually, beaver were completely wiped out of this area. There weren't any beaver around at all.
These aerial photographs of Elk Island National Park from the 1920s show a surprising impact of the beaver's extermination. For almost a century, more than 99% of the land was dry.
And then they were successfully reintroduced in 1941. The beaver started damming up streams and impounding water, and it went from less than 1% to almost 8% coverage in the park, and it has really helped out maintaining water on the landscape here in Elk Island.
The beaver was able to increase Elk Island's water coverage tenfold because of how they operate. Beavers colonize not as a single lodge, but in a network of them, spread across the landscape. When a family gets too big for its pond, the kits, at about 2 years of age, are forced to emigrate to a neighboring waterway. It's the riskiest trip of their young lives. Traveling on land, they're almost defenseless and quickly join the food chain as easy prey for bears, wolves, and coyotes. But those who do make it to a new source of water become the founding fathers of a fresh chain of ponds. Because of this consistent pattern of expansion, it's hard to tell from these lush meadows and forests that Elk Island National Park is experiencing the worst drought in over 130 years. In times like this, it's easy to understand why First Nations people valued the super beaver for more than just its fur.
And particularly on the plains, First Nations people had a very high respect for the beaver as a species and didn't harvest the animal very much. And the reason for that was that if you ever a person wandering across the Great Plains of Central North America in a drought like we're experiencing right now, there's 2 things you need to survive, or 3 things: food, shelter, and water. And during a drought, where do you find water in the Great Plains? Either in major river courses or in the tributaries that feed them. And those tributaries, if they're dammed up by beaver, have a year-round permanent source of water.
In a drought, the pressures on any ecosystem are intense. Elk Island's large land animals depend on the beaver's water management practices to survive. The wardens have even seen wildlife running into the park because it's the only place where there is water. Here, the moose, the largest land animal, doesn't have to give up its favorite forage, which studies have shown to be the growth on the edge of beaver ponds. And elk, for whom the national park was created, can thank only the beaver for keeping their safe haven from becoming a dust bowl. In just 60 years, the Elk Island beaver population has increased from 2 reintroduced animals to over 3,000. But although they're now influential enough to reduce the effects of a drought, pond boundaries have still been dramatically reduced, exposing soggy mudflats that create new dangers. And despite the beaver's best efforts, this drought will still claim her dead.
This is an adult cow elk that entered this pond system probably for a drink. And it was the last decision she made because she got mired in the mud and eventually succumbed to the stress of being mired and probably drowned in her sleep eventually.
These newly exposed mudflats that are a death trap to others are also a fresh bonanza of marsh grasses for the beaver. And while ungulates need 4 stomachs to squeeze nutrition from grass, the beaver has only 1 stomach, and the gift of coprophagy.
That's kind of gross, but it works really well for beaver, is it will defecate, and then it can eat that material again and get the nutrients that were left the first time around out again. And that's very common for beaver to do. And they actually have 2 different types of pellets, the ones that stay out and the ones that get re-ingested.
Even when the drought appears to be securing a solid foothold on its territory, drying it to a no man's land, Super Beaver doesn't give up. He digs in.
This is one of the ponds that was probably the most consistently filled ponds that I chose for my study area. It was one of the ponds where we had a long-term beaver population and very stable as far as water levels and beaver. The air photos show it and the beaver records show it. What we have now is basically a mud flat.
Instead of surrendering to the drought, the beavers here have dug a deep network of trenches throughout their former pond to keep water on the land.
Beaver naturally make channels, and they usually make channels from the pond edge up into the woody area, and that's normal. What we don't see are channels in the middle of the pond just to maintain water levels. That is something I've never seen before, trying to just keep some sort of water level here so they have access throughout their original territory.
Man has learned from Elk Island that when conditions are right, this amazing rodent makes the ecosystem a paradise for all. And when conditions are devastating, it keeps paradise from becoming a desert. But man still hasn't learned that transplanting a species like the beaver into a foreign ecosystem is like welcoming the serpent to Eden. It may look like North America's Great Rocky Mountains, but this is actually the southern tip of South America. 14,000 kilometers from its Canadian birthplace, Tierra del Fuego has become a new home and a new conquest for the super beaver. This last piece of land before Antarctica is well known for its wicked winds, dangerous seas, a lot of penguins, and now the beaver. The great Charles Darwin himself visited Tierra del Fuego in 1832, and even he could not have imagined what would sprout here only a century later. Tierra del Fuego is a strange, enchanted land, isolated at the end of the world, a place where life has evolved all on its own. Here, only migrating seabirds and marine life could come and go as they please. there's only one principal type of tree, the southern beech. Moss dominates the forest. Rabbits were introduced and still run wild. There are no frogs or snakes, in fact, no reptiles or amphibians of any kind. There are few land animals. Nothing could get on or off this continental dead end. Biodiversity on the land is amazingly low, but what is here in abundance. For a beaver, that means massive, virgin forests, its favorite food and habitat. With no competition or predators around, it's a perfect recipe for disaster. In 1947, the Argentine government of Juan Perón imported 25 pairs of beavers from Canada to inspire a local fur industry in Ushuaia, the southernmost city in the world. But the experiment failed miserably. It's so cold here that the imported beavers grew thick, greasy pelts, unsuitable for the fur trade. And when the fur farming stopped, it wasn't long before some escaped into the wild. The beaver, whose incisors never stop growing and who must constantly gnaw on wood or die, continued to feed and multiply. Today, there are over 100,000 beavers on Tierra del Fuego. Julio Escobar hopes to find a way to control this now out-of-control population. Down below, the forest floor has been decimated by the beavers, and ponds and dams litter the landscape. For over a decade, Julio has tracked this foreign invader and the mounting damage.
The story of the beavers here is very interesting. I mean, it's truly amazing to see a place I've known since I was a child dynamically shifting before my eyes, with dramatic new environmental changes and the different perspectives that come with them.
Julio has no trouble finding his super beavers. Signs of their ferocious appetite are everywhere. His first stop is a valley where beaver dams have flooded a vast expanse of forest, turning it into a virtual tree cemetery.
The combined impacts of the beavers here may or may not be environmentally sustainable. I mean, this impact is significant.
For waterfowl, the beaver's invasion has been a bonanza, and tourists love the animal. The only beaver colony in the southern hemisphere is a star attraction. But in the 1980s, the population reached critical mass, and now ranch owners are preparing to go to war.
This place of 50,000 acres was donated to my great-grandfather for his work as a missionary with the Algonquin Indians in 1886. The beavers to us are a plague. They do an awful lot of damage. Gain fence posts. If you don't peel the bark off a fence post, or else use an old dried post, in a couple of days you'll have them chewed through. So most of our fences are in valleys because it's the only place you can really dig a post hole. Well, the beavers build dams usually in series in these valleys and cover up our fences. It was to divide two fields for winter use and summer use. Once there was only 2 strands of the wire left. The rest were all underwater, which froze over, and then the sheep just walked right across.
In Tierra del Fuego, beavers and humans are now in direct competition. Both species like the valleys, where there's plenty of water and trees. But today, it's the beaver that's winning this contest of wills, forcing landowners to take matters into their own hands.
Well, for beaver control, we just shoot the beavers. We don't use traps because we find them rather dangerous. We will run over them with a car if we can, if we find them on the road. Since the houses are out in the lakes that they form, dogs can't get at them. They're safe, which makes them able to keep increasing.
With no predators to worry about, the Argentine beaver has lost its sense of fear. Now the next stage of their invasion has begun, and no one knows if it can be stopped. The Canadian beaver, valley by valley, is slowly colonizing Tierra del Fuego and looking north to the continent beyond.
Looking throughout the island here in Tierra del Fuego and seeing how much of the valleys, the most physically ideal places for the beaver, have already been taken over by them, it's 100% taken already. So it raises an important question. Will the pressures of their own population growth force them to now expand into less ideal areas where they wouldn't normally go?
In only 50 years, 50 beavers have grown to become 100,000. With no predators around, they have a license to chew and can wander anywhere they like. And when they get tired of walking, they simply flood the forest.
First, they colonized the valleys in the south of the island in the 80s and then moved north in the 90s.
But the beaver of Tierra del Fuego has colonized more than just valleys. Even high on mountain slopes, places they rarely go in Canada, they've made a home. It probably took days to climb this high, and Julio has a theory on what kept them going. Studies have shown that beavers will work incessantly to stop the sound of running water. It seems to drive them a little crazy. One researcher placed speakers playing recorded water noises within range of the beavers. Soon enough, the speakers were packed in mud, stifling the sound. Julio believes that beavers heard the sound of meltwater running down the side of this mountain. Driven by instinct, they climbed up to stop the maddening noise. Only in a land without predators would they dare to scale such heights. Today, Julio too has climbed up to investigate the discovery of a mountain beaver dam that broke. The dry pond bed reveals a labyrinth of intricate tunnels, a new insight into the beaver's work ethic. They chose to build in a peat bog which retains water naturally and offers easy, deep digging. But when spring arrived, meltwater from these snow-covered mountains proved too much, and the dam buckled under the pressure. The result was a mudslide that destroyed everything in its path and blocked the road below for days. Anyone in its way would have been killed. Now it's no surprise that Julio can see only one solution, a way that includes a renewed role for the hunter.
This could be the only way to control our beaver problem. The beaver population is going to keep growing, and there's nothing here in nature to stop it. So the only possible solution is to implement a program recruiting the locals to become hunters. Extracting them individually is our only chance to start containing the beaver problem.
Once again, but this time at the opposite end of the world, it means setting a trap, and then partially destroying the dam to bait the beaver into renovations. The best solution of all is to use the beaver's own industry against itself. The government has now implemented a bounty and will pay 5 pesos for every beaver tail turned in. But Julio concedes it's not enough to stop the growing tide of beavers that has already flooded valleys and mountains, forcing this freshwater creature to conquer the surrounding ocean itself. Julio has hired a boat to investigate reports that the beaver has already reached the islands to the north. If they are there, they're on their way to the mainland.
We don't know how many islands the beavers have reached, but it's many, many islands. Salt water is obviously not a problem for them. And given the beavers' size, these are huge distances they're traveling. So soon, the problem will be, how do we cope with them on the mainland?
In its constant quest for new territory, Super Beaver has now built a dam on the edge of the ocean. Now a saltwater swimmer, it's quite possible that within 10 years, it will reach the mainland. And if it does, that crisis could make the invasion of Tierra del Fuego seem like a minor skirmish. So far, South America's best defense against the super beaver's expansion from Tierra del Fuego to the mainland has been the natural barrier of the Darwin Mountains. But if it does reach the continent, it could be a disaster. The problem is, like Tierra del Fuego, the southern mainland doesn't have much biodiversity either. There aren't enough of the right kind of plants to turn flooded forest into healthy marsh. So instead of inspiring life like it does in Canada, the beaver here destroys ecosystems. Once the beaver invades the mainland, the forests of the Andes' eastern slopes, even Amazonia itself, are within reach. And if it does make it all the way to the rainforests of Brazil, it will be up to the crocodile and piranha to win the battle of the teeth that threatens an entire continent. But today, the Canadian beaver isn't just threatening South America. It's also invaded Russia and parts of Scandinavia. Here too, it's causing ecological havoc and forcing the less industrious European beaver to retreat from its own ancient and slightly drier habitat. One Russian scientist, comparing the two, said that the Canadian beavers have more stamina and adaptability. They are more active, and they can survive better, while a British newspaper sniffed at Canadian beavers as uncivilized brutes. Introducing a foreign animal to a fragile new habitat is a man-made formula for a natural disaster. But at home in Canada, the beaver has been working miracles for thousands of years. They may be a plague to South American ranchers, but here farmers consider them a blessing. When Super Beaver builds his hideout, the lodge, he hauls a massive amount of wood into the water, And as it slowly rots, nitrogen is deposited on the muddy bottoms of ponds and streams. Incredibly, this natural fertilizer has helped to create almost all of North America's best farmland.
Well, this is very typical of what you get outside of Elk Island, because you've got agricultural fields right up to the boundary in many cases, and also urban development happening at an explosive rate in Alberta. So what you have here is a field for agricultural purposes, but what you can see are some remnant wetlands that might have been here before. And they would have probably been connected to the system that we just saw through waterways and the like. So this would have been beaver habitat. You've got another remnant wetland over there as well.
From farming to fur trading, the beaver's indisputable role in the creation of a country has not gone unnoticed.
Beaver are the Canadian symbol, because of its influence on the exploration and development of this country. The Hudson's Bay Company and their exploration of the West, because of the presence of beaver, opened up this country. And beaver are a very resourceful, tough, and intelligent species, much like Canadians.
But the beaver was an integral part of Canada long before people ever came here. Evolution dealt it a winning hand millions of years ago. Paleontologist Dick Harrington has even found evidence of it close to the North Pole.
As far as the beavers and their behavior, I think that a type of behavior that's established very early on and is successful will tend to remain in that line. And of course, we know it's still very successful because of these transfers to South America, and we've seen what kind of havoc they've been able to wreak down there.
From the top of the globe all the way to the bottom, the Canadian beaver is now taking its best shot at world domination.
With all the changes that it makes to its habitat, and there are many other animals that modify their surroundings, but when you compare any of them to what the beaver does, making a whole new world out of whatever environment it finds to live in, it truly makes it a super beaver.
Realmente sí, es un super beaver.
As long as there is wood, as long as there is running water, nature's super beaver will fight for lodges, dams, and the Canadian way. Stronger than an ice age and unfazed by global warming, this modest rodent is changing the world. Superhero or supervillain? Only time will tell. In a secret, forbidding land, modern science is poised on the edge of a breakthrough. An ancient animal is inspiring an improbable dream. "3,000 years ago, a survivor of the massive extinction that occurred at the end of the last ice age mysteriously disappeared from this lost corner of the far north. Now the Soviet Muskox is back on the Siberian tundra, and these living relics are yielding important clues to the distant past. It may even help scientists bring the ice age back to life. The circumpolar top of the world is a frozen ring, gripping North America and Russia together. It's a vast, barren, unforgiving realm. Deep in the heart of Russia, the Taimyr Peninsula in Siberia may be the most remote Arctic location of them all. A few years ago, you couldn't come here if you wanted to. This was the Soviet Union, the workers' paradise that went wrong. Power was centralized in the Kremlin in Moscow. If you stepped out of line there, you got a one-way ticket to the gulags of the Taimyr. Trying to stay warm building factories and military bases across the north. This was the land behind the Iron Curtain, a secret battlefield of the Cold War. But the rise and fall of the Soviet Union was only a second in time for this place. Long before the Iron Curtain, there was the ice wall. 10,000 years ago in the late Pleistocene epoch, this was an Ice Age oasis for muskox. Muskox and woolly mammoths were the most numerous prehistoric animals on the Taimyr Peninsula. Here, muskox were the cold weather batteries of the Ice Age, conserving energy when the temperatures plunged. When they found food, they hardly moved at all. In the glacial cold, muskox depended on soft underwool called kiviot to keep them warm in howling winter winds. 8 times warmer than sheep's wool, kiviot was the planet's best natural insulator. This huge coat also created an illusion of immense size. Beneath the thick wool, muskox ranged in size between a cow and a goat. They kept to themselves, herding together for protection and facing predators like the saber-toothed tiger with a wall of horns. For 1 million years, this perfect biological design kept muskox alive, ranging as far south as Spain and the American Great Plains. At the end of the Ice Age, the great ice sheets melted, flooding vast sections of the planet. On the Taimyr, most Pleistocene animals died, including the woolly mammoth. Somehow, muskox survived. Then, 3,000 years ago, they too mysteriously disappeared from this part of the world. Nobody knows why. But in the high Canadian Arctic, muskox continued to thrive. In 1974, in a curious twist of fate, Canada gave the Soviet Union a gift of 10 muskox. Today, there are more than 2,000 muskox back on the Taimyr. It's almost as if they never left. Now the reintroduced muskox are teaching scientists here about life during the Ice Age, especially the extinct woolly mammoth.
And the connection of muskoxen and mammoths is of course a very good connection, because if you take a look at present-day muskoxen, their fur, their underfur, and you compare it with that of the woolly mammoth, which we discovered on the Taimyr Peninsula, you see there are a lot of similarities. And I want to find out why the mammoths died out 10,000 or 8,000 years ago, and why the muskoxen could survive on the Taimyr Peninsula till 3,000 years BP.
Dutch paleontologist Dick Maul is a legend among Ice Age researchers. Dick and French explorer Bernard Bouy study Ice Age animals pulled from the Siberian permafrost and kept frozen in a unique cave made of ice blocks in the town of Hatanga.
Why did this animal become extinct on the Taimyr Peninsula about 3,000 years BP? And after their reintroduction are doing so well, was it the virus which causes the extinction? Was it the climate which causes the extinction? Was it hunting which causes the extinction? We don't know. We know a lot about the mammoths, but we do not know exactly how they behaved, how huge were the herds they were living in with 30 animals or maybe 100. Did these herds gather together like the musk oxen? How were mammoths living during the Pleistocene? How were musk oxen living during the Pleistocene? So there are many mysteries which need to be solved.
Bernard Bouy and Dick Maul are using the muskox to unlock the secrets of the Ice Age. They're here on a bold adventure, traveling back in time to find out if it's possible to clone an extinct woolly mammoth. Bernard Bouy knows Siberia is not an easy place to work. In this rugged, remote landscape, there are always delays. Bernard has been organizing North Pole expeditions for the past decade. Today, he's chartered a helicopter to scout the territory, searching for clues to life during the Ice Age. But for the moment, he can't go anywhere. The pilots would rather fish than fly. Finally, the helicopter rises over the most northerly trees in the world, flying back to Hatanga.
You cannot come here and not be interested by the mammoth fauna, because when you come here, step by step, it happens like a virus, you know? Step by step, I become more and more interested.
The dream of creating an urban Arctic world died with the Soviets. And at first glance, nothing much is happening in Hatanga. The Cold War soldiers have gone home. Life is peaceful, or so it appears. Beneath the quiet surface, this is a land of dreams and obsessions. In Hatanga, Bernard and Dick have both a below-ground ice cave and an above-ground lab, where visiting scientists come to view an impressive collection of ancient muskox and mammoth bones.
Yes, this one is all one bag.
In the lab, Dick Moll shows French molecular biologist Régis de Brun his favorite muskox sample.
It's kind of a muskox puzzle.
Régis hopes to extract DNA from the bones. It may prove Ice Age muskox were the same as today's.
There's a nice row of the short neck. This is the best specimen. It was collected in the year 2000. This is typical for a muskox. And first of all, I thought, oh, maybe it's not so old, because the horn sheets were attached to the skull, which is unusual. So what we did, and you can see it here, we broke off a small piece of bone, brought it to the university in Groningen for a radiocarbon date, and it became clear that this specimen was more than 36,000 years old at the time the animal died. Keep it in your hand, it's quite heavy. So if you want to do some research on muskoxen, on the DNA of the muskoxen, then you are welcome to sample this one, because we can easily take away a small piece. And I don't know if you need a lot of...
No, only half a gram or something like that is enough.
So you are welcome to do.
Okay, it's great.
Yeah.
This one's really nice.
Yeah, but this is one of the most beautiful specimens we have.
Driven by their obsession with the past, Bernard and Dick search for answers. Can the Siberian tundra support other Ice Age animals besides the muskox? Can they actually bring a woolly mammoth back to life? For now, the treasures locked away in their ice cave are as close to the Ice Age as they can get. Built during the Cold War, the ice cave is a labyrinth of underground tunnels cutting through the permafrost. Traditionally a storehouse for reindeer and fish, many say it used to hold nuclear missiles. Now the ice cave stores one of the world's finest collections of Pleistocene bones. Each field season, the scientists collect an ancient harvest from the tundra. Skulls of muskox, horses, steppe bison, mammoths, and mammoth tusks are all kept here. This is where the scientists study the best samples.
When you work on mammoth or when you work on muskox, you have to understand the environment. But to understand the environment, you have to catch the specimen in the best condition. This cave, it's a perfect area, it's a perfect place to do this, because it's built in the permafrost. The temperature is more or less plus 4 or 5 degrees with a constant temperature, between 15 and 10 below zero.
The prize they seek is a frozen mammoth carcass containing living strands of DNA. In the last few years, Bernard and Dick have transferred two mammoths into the ice cave, the Yarkov and the Hook mammoth. Neither one turned out to be paleontology's elusive Holy Grail, but they have revealed other secrets.
So, Dick, did you find something interesting?
Yes. You want to know what this animal was eating? Its last meal?
Of course.
Here it is.
No.
Yes.
Did you? Oh, already?
Yeah, look, all vegetation remains.
Mm-hmm.
You see the soft tissues of the mammoth here, and there's a huge piece of skin here.
Very interesting.
But what we need to find is a carcass of a muskox. From muskox, so far as I know, there are no soft remains, soft parts preserved in the permafrost. Because of the reintroduction of muskoxen on the Taimyr Peninsula, when we come across something like a carcass of a muskox, our people in the teams will tell it's a present day one, because it's so difficult to tell what is of a recent animal or what is of an animal of 10,000 years ago. So what we can stress is that the reintroduction on the Taimyr Peninsula was very successful. The animal became extinct in this area 3,000 years before present, but it's causing a problem for our research.
The muskox survive and grows up in this environment now means that if we are successful in cloning a mammoth, we can find an area which is enough for some specimen.
Cloning a mammoth. If it does happen, it will be here in Siberia. Out on the tundra, the Ice Age, it seems, never did disappear. And just beneath the permafrost, it remains alive. Something has frightened the muskox. The dominant bull is worried. 10,000 years ago, it was a dangerous world for both the young and old. The big bulls protected the herd, guarding a good patch of food like a fortress. Muskox were hunted mostly by great Siberian wolves, and perhaps something even more dangerous. The first humans who arrived here at the end of the Ice Age were nomadic hunters. Muskox and giant reindeer provided rich hunting grounds for these distant cousins to the first indigenous peoples in North America. Perhaps these hunters killed off the muskox 3,000 years ago. Over time, the people of the Taimyr Peninsula became reindeer herders. Domestication has made Ice Age reindeer smaller, but more numerous. Until the Soviets reintroduced muskox, only reindeer and reindeer herders lived year-round on the tundra, just as they do today. In their traditional stories, extinct woolly mammoths live on as creators of the world. Canadian anthropologist Dr. David Anderson, who studies the Dolgan people, has found an ancient warning here.
Dolgan people in this part of Eastern Taimyr are very reverent about the earth. They don't like digging into the earth. And in fact, they say that anyone who's been hired by the state to dig an underground cellar, their family then suffers deaths or illness and so forth. People have also said that it's very bad to dig into the ground to bring out bones and mammoth ivory and so forth, and that you can only take things out of the land if it's on the surface. And the reason why they say that is that this part of the north of Taimyr, there are a lot of shamans here, and that the ground is very sort of charged with this shamanic presence.
In this unforgiving polar environment, reindeer herders have maintained a precarious, isolated way of life for thousands of years. Now they've seen muskox return to the tundra along with another new breed, scientists digging in the permafrost for an elusive prize. To the Dolgan, at least, resurrecting the Ice Age is a dangerous dream. Northeast of Hatanga, Canadian anthropologist David Anderson is traveling into the world of the Dolgan people, reindeer herders who live year-round on the tundra. Studying their traditional stories, David wants to learn why they believe extinct Ice Age animals should be left buried in the ground. On his way out to the tundra, David stops in the village of Novorodne to visit a Dolgan family with relatives among the reindeer herders. Zina Portiaga tells David about muskox and shows him some kiviot, perhaps the world's most expensive wool that she's gathered on the barrens.
The first time we saw muskox, some people were afraid and other people were curious. We didn't know what they were doing here. We still don't know. But their wool is very good quality, like down.
The muskox seems to be, the way that people talk about it, it's something that's very alive. They respect its vibrancy. It's something that it isn't mythic in its world-creating features, but it is something that's found a place within this ecosystem. The mammoth is a completely different example.
You should never dig into the ground. Bad things happen. An old man that was there when Bernard dug up the Yarkov mammoth, he died soon afterwards, along with his brother. It's because they dug into the earth and disturbed the shamans.
If in North America the raven is one of the creators of the world, in this part of Siberia it's the mammoth. They etch the earth with their tusks in order to create the rivers. The places where the mammoth stepped, this is the place where lakes are formed. And they're thought of as the creators of landscapes. You don't treat the remains of these world creators lightly.
Although a thick fog obscures the riverbanks, making it dangerous to navigate, it's time to sail. A day's journey upriver, nomadic reindeer herders are waiting for David Anderson. As the Dolgans have instructed him, he throws tobacco into the river, an offering to the shamans and the journey ahead. The captain is a good navigator, but the river's shallow north shore can only be reached with a smaller boat. Even then, people will still have to walk ashore or be carried. There's no such thing as a grocery store on the tundra, making gifts of flour or sugar most welcome. The good news is the reindeer herders are still here. The bad news is the fog is getting thicker. It's almost midnight, but with 24 hours of light this far north, it's hard to tell what time it is. A practical people, the Dolgan craft reindeer halters out of ancient mammoth ivory they found still poking above the frozen ground. Being practical keeps people alive on the tundra, although there are almost no landmarks and the way ahead is obscured by fog. The Dolgan always know where they're going. It's an ancient and complex form of navigation, guided only by past experience on the land. They say they can feel their way home. For thousands of years, indigenous people and reindeer lived in this area where muskox didn't survive until they were reintroduced. What are the secrets of survival? There's little evidence of dramatic climatic change 3,000 years ago. Did a deadly supervirus sweep through the ancient muskox herds? Or did nomadic hunters like the Dolgan hunt them to extinction? For those interested in returning other Ice Age animals to the tundra, these are important mysteries that need to be solved. Sorting bones back in Hatanga, Dick Mall is greeted by Vladimir Eisner.
Dick, hello.
Hey.
An experienced tundra guide and longtime member of Bernard's team.
Here are two bags.
Show me what you have.
Vladimir believes he has found bones that might prove that nomadic hunters killed off the muskox.
Look, this bone. So specially broken.
I see what you mean, yeah?
Not by permafrost, but maybe for humans.
Why do you think humans did it?
Because they are so strange broken. Look.
You think they took the marrow out?
Maybe.
This is muskox.
And this?
Humorous. This is muskox. This is beautiful. I mean, for a paleontologist to see something like this, is your heart is beating faster and faster.
Excited, Dick wants to see where they come from.
So tell me where the site is. It's really beautiful.
It's around 100 kilometers from Katanga.
100?
Yes.
Where is the site exactly?
Here, a small lake called Semilach. It means in local dialect, lake with bones.
Lake with bones?
Yes, in local dialect.
If you think this is a kill site, we have to check it. You know, look how this fits, Vladimir. This is so beautiful. A find of a partial skeleton of a muskox is spectacular.
Now I'm interested in paleontologic founds too.
Very good.
I begin to love old bones.
Continue working as a hunter in this area and hunt for mammoths and muskox.
Good, I'll do.
Good.
Looking for bones in the permafrost is like searching an enormous haystack for needles. They're there, but finding them takes good planning. Dick and Bernard will search together, while Vladimir Eisner will go farther north, to the north shore of Lake Taimyr, an area known as the Siberian Badlands. The holy grail of paleontology is still to be claimed. Somewhere out there, the intact frozen bodies of a woolly mammoth and an Ice Age muskox are lying in the permafrost, waiting to be found. Muskox and mammoth bones hidden in the permafrost can solve the mystery of the Ice Age extinction if the right bones are found. On the tundra of the Taimyr Peninsula, the search is on.
To go everywhere.
Bernard and Dick are driving a Russian monster truck known as a Bronto. Specially designed to drive over the soggy tundra without getting stuck, it's a unique vehicle. If necessary, the Bronto can float and drive across the lake. For now, it'll follow along the lake shore. This is where the best specimens might emerge from the melting permafrost. Further north in the Siberian Badlands, Vladimir Eisner looks for muskox bones cracked open by early human hunters. But first, he stopped to collect wild mushrooms. Years of Arctic experience have taught him to depend on the land for survival and companionship. Up here, isolated and alone, he's seen men go crazy.
Men are sitting here for 3-4 months, sometimes for half a year, without seeing nobody, without a radio sometimes, only speaking with a dog. And sometimes people become mad and the roof is gone. No, people run out in the tundra and they die.
In the days of the Soviet Union, these abandoned ruins were one of the most northerly weather stations in the world. Vladimir used to work here as a meteorologist before becoming a guide and hunter. Now there is no one living here, no one to forecast the weather. The Soviet Empire has turned to rusted metal, just another set of bones laid to rest on the tundra. For Russians today, state support is long gone, and those who choose to remain in the north need to find new employment, like searching for the Ice Age. For Bernard and Dick, the new Siberia is the world's best location for researching the Earth 10,000 years ago.
You want to find more, Dick?
Each year, the permafrost erodes, unearthing Pleistocene bones scattered in the shoreline mud, waiting to be found.
It's good that there is not a lot of tourism in this area, because otherwise there will be nothing on the beach.
Along with ancient muskox, bison, and wolf bones, there may be 1 million mammoth carcasses beneath the tundra's frozen surface.
No, but I'm sure that you come each morning.
Oh.
You can find something, yeah?
If you have this in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's take a look.
Back at the abandoned meteorological station, the recent past is yielding a treasure of another kind. Several tons of free gasoline, left behind by the Soviets, a last gift to a changing world.
Before, clear that we found bones in tundra, but we throw them out. In the tusk, we collected to make handles for knives or to give it for our friends as souvenirs. They are interesting and beautiful things. And now we began to understand that these bones are from very old animals.
Uh-huh. Look how it is melting fast. You saw this?
No.
It's also Muskox, upper jaw, with 2 molars.
You find the close
on
to
the beach,
the...
yeah? And this is from a carnivore. I guess this is from a polar fox.
Of an old one?
This is an old one, I'm sure. Because if you look at the beach, close to the side, to our campsite.
Yeah.
The only full-time human residents on Lake Taimir's north shore are a few hardy fishermen. In the Soviet era, there were only gulag camps here, from which no one returned alive. But Nikolai the fisherman chose this place to live years ago. Until today, he thought he'd seen everything it was possible to see here. He's found a mammoth carcass on the shoreline and brought a thigh bone back to his fishing hut.
Ever since I was young, I wanted to be a fisherman on the tundra. I love the job. It's a hard job, but you have to love your job. In the last 5 years, I've seen many more muskoxen than I've seen before. I'll even see them down on the beach by Lake Taimir.
Enduring brutally tough conditions may have finally paid off for Nikolai. He knows he's made a valuable find. There's more than a thigh bone out there. Today, Nikolai is proud. His friend Vladimir has called on the radio and says he'll come to have a look. As rain starts to fall, Nikolai waits. In either heavy summer downpours or vicious winter blizzards, waiting was a key survival strategy of Ice Age muskox. In their world, time was meaningless. Instead of migrating to better weather like reindeer, muskox stayed where they were, huddling together and eating what they could find on the tundra floor. Astonishingly thick coats kept them warm and dry. The Dolgan people say that bad things happen to those who dig in the earth to find mammoths. With little luck of finding good bone specimens and their Russian monster truck stuck in the lakeside mud, Bernard and Dick must be asking each other if the Dolgan legends are true. Ice Age muskox and mammoth sank into mud sinkholes like this one, where they died and were preserved in permafrost. Will their Bronto meet the same fate? Miles away, in a strange, heavy fog on Lake Taimir's north shore, old friends Vladimir and Nikolai repair fishing nets. Nikolai tells Vladimir that he thinks he's made a great discovery, and the thigh bone is just a sample. The rest of his mammoth is stored at another fishing camp called Cape Sablera. For Vladimir, it's a great surprise. Looking for broken muskox bones, has he stumbled by accident onto the holy grail of paleontology? On the vast Siberian tundra, the quest to find Ice Age muskox and mammoth remains continues. And now a fisherman has made a great discovery. Eager to see it, Bernard Bouy and Dick Moll are frustrated. Their tundra car has met its match in the mud, and for now, they're not going anywhere until a helicopter is called in by radio to pull them out. In this extreme environment, life hangs by a thread. Helicopters like the big Mi-8 are a lifeline to safety, flown by battle-hardened veterans of the Soviet war in Afghanistan. Finally, things are looking up for Bernard and Dick. Their car is flown right to Cape Sablera, where the bones are stored. After years of near misses, searching for the perfect specimen, Nikolai's find is exciting news. Is this the one? The source of intact mammoth DNA? At Cape Sablera, Nikolai is waiting to show them the mammoth's tusks and molars he's discovered.
Oh, this looks like a pear.
Looks like a pear. It's a real pear.
Wow.
And Bernard and Dick are impressed.
Oh, la, la.
Oh, in very nice condition. Look.
Oh, la, 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 la.
The quality is excellent. This is wonderful. I have to push this a little bit more.
Interesting.
Excellent. When you look into the alveoli, in the pulpal cavity, you almost can see through it.
Yeah.
And we take the outer curve.
Measuring the tusks yields information about their age, sex, and their value. There's a lot of high-quality ivory here, and everyone in the Taimyr knows it's in high demand on either Russia's legal or black markets.
What do you estimate the weight? 40 kilos?
I would say 35. I became professional in picture with a tusk. Like
These mammoth tusks are worth over $10,000, but to Bernard and Dick, they could be priceless. For now, it's better to document the promising find and return later.
Not only tusk and this place,
this, and when they have other bones, they could be an entire complete skeleton.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Really well preserved.
Let's take it to Hatanga.
No?
I'm joking. It would be a wonderful addition for our collection in Hatanga.
Yeah.
We can name this mammoth in honor of Nikolai, the Nikolai mammoth.
Yeah, that's good.
Because it's indicating there's more.
Yeah.
So it needs to have a name.
Yeah.
So.
Nikolai mammoth.
And Cape Sablera we have already so often in our collection. Yeah. So the Nikolai mammoth would be a good idea. And maybe he wants to donate them to us.
It would be much more better idea.
Yeah.
Bernard makes Nikolai an offer for the tusks. Nikolai asks for time to consider it. Perhaps there's a better offer somewhere out there. Today, muskox look exactly as they did in the last great ice age, when woolly mammoths were alive. The high Russian Arctic is as close to the remnants of the Ice Age glaciers as life here can get. In this harsh world, muskox are evolution's perfect design for the tundra's short summers and long, cold winters. Due to global warming, there may never be another Ice Age, but the presence of muskox proves that some Ice Age animals can not only survive, but thrive on the Taimyr. 10,000 years ago, there were many more woolly creatures here, thriving in the shadow of fearsome glaciers. But when the ancient ice walls melted, most of those animals died. Thick coats and an uncanny ability to get by with meager food sources help muskox survive. On the modern tundra, the woolly mammoth would likely starve. As far back as the Dolgan reindeer herders can remember, the tundra has been a world of lakes and frozen ground. Most of the year they eat a steady diet of reindeer, but in the late summer it's fish, the best raw freshwater lake salmon in the world. Year-round, these nomads live in movable huts made of animal skins. Today, the thick fog prevents them from moving camp, so David Anderson asks the camp's elder for stories about the muskox of their past.
Muskoxen used to live here a long time ago. The old people used to say they once lived here and then they died out. The old people said that at one time there was very high water, and the water covered all of the land, and the land disappeared. And that's when the muskoxen died out and there weren't any more. And there was nothing left in the area, just tundra. To this day, you can still find the remains of wood and trees.
10,000 years ago, the melting ice sheets hit the north like a climate bomb. Incredibly, these reindeer herders remember such a time.
The Dolgan folklore that you find written in the literature has many examples of flooding. Shamans knew that there was a flood coming, would make a boat and save some animals on the boat, but some other animals like the mammoths and the muskox didn't get onto the boat, and they died in the high waters and weren't able to survive.
The collapse of the Ice Age glaciers brought the end of one world and the beginning of another. For almost everyone on Earth, it's a forgotten time. But on the Taimyr, the story of these origins has passed on from generation to generation, as fresh today as it was 5 minutes after the fall of the ice wall. Is this where scientists can find their answers to questions about the Ice Age environment? Here, and nowhere else on Earth, the Ice Age is alive in living memory. On the remote tundra of the eastern Taimyr Peninsula, a strange fog has been thickening for days. The Dolgan reindeer herders say it's the worst fog anyone's seen in 30 years. The shamans are angry, they say. Someone must have dug into the earth and disturbed a mammoth. Canadian anthropologist David Anderson has found that the idea of returning a cloned mammoth to the tundra frightens the Dolgan. They're still getting used to the muskox. Animals returning from the frozen land of the dead must prove they can survive on the tundra, and survival here isn't easy. Today, in spite of the fog, the Dolgan are lassoing their reindeer so the vet can inoculate the herd. It's a reindeer rodeo. For thousands of years, indigenous people on the Taimyr have survived together with reindeer. And after 30 years, the reintroduced muskox are only now being accepted.
People have said that when they first saw muskox and they were shocked that they were so big and furry and that people saw them as being somewhat out of place. Now that people have had a chance to watch their behavior, they say, well, it's good to see something thriving in our land. Yeah, I think it's a very healthy worldview to look at muskox as something that are alive and that sort of give sort of a living aspect to the land.
And just as they were during the Ice Age, muskox have again become a part of the Siberian Arctic. In the ice cave in Hatanga, French molecular biologist Régis de Brun is carefully taking tissue samples from the hook mammoth.
It's really amazing to consider that today we can retrieve the DNA of an individual that was living maybe 20,000 years before present.
But so far, intact strands of mammoth DNA have yet to be found, and what has been found has degraded over time. No good for cloning. Not yet, anyway.
We think that we will find here in the frozen mammoths much more DNA than what we are used to with mammoths, because the mammoths we are used to working with are kept in museums for decades. And here the mammoths just get out from the permafrost, are kept in frozen conditions, which are really good conditions for preserving DNA for a long term.
Even so, cloning an extinct mammoth seems nearly impossible. The tissue must be frozen perfectly at the moment of death. There's a 1 in a million chance of ever finding such a specimen. But the Siberian permafrost is the world's best natural freezer. and Bernard and Dick are already planning next year's expedition to dig out the Nikolai mammoth. In the meantime, they keep on making important discoveries about the Ice Age environment.
Most people think that the mammoths and the mammoth fauna were adapted to a snow-covered tundra, but that's wrong. We know from the fossil record that the mammoth was adapted to a grassland environment together with the associated fauna, including the muskox. That the muskox are doing so well today on the tundra, which is even snow-covered in winter, and the winter is extremely long here. It's something which is unique.
What is very interesting working on mammoth and the megafauna at that time is that you can understand better how was the environment at that time and what was the life at that time. Not only the life of the mammoth, but also the life of a human. Yeah. And to understand the life of a human, like you need for the mammoth, you have to understand the environment.
In the decades since this secret Soviet world was open to the West, many answers about the Ice Age have been unearthed on the Siberian tundra. Bernard and his team are closing out their Arctic field season. There's much to celebrate. Nikolai the fisherman has agreed on a price and will sell them his mammoth tusks. Perhaps next year, the Nikolai mammoth will yield intact DNA and they can clone an ancient Ice Age mammal. Either way, this is the best place on Earth to solve the scientific mysteries that remain frozen in time. Siberia is a land where oral tradition still remembers the last Ice Age, and stories are still told of a time when muskox roamed these vast grassland plains beside woolly mammoths. Muskox survived the end of the Ice Age the same way they survived the collapse of the Soviet Union. They found the last good place to eat and barely noticed the disaster unfolding all around them. No one knows why they did disappear, but when they were returned to the Taimyr after a 3,000-year absence, it was like they never left. Canada and Russia are linked by the Arctic and now by one of nature's great evolutionary creations. The top of the world is once again the realm of muskox, a world without borders, a world beyond time. For the rest of the creatures of the last Ice Age, they're probably gone forever. But if bets could be placed on evolution's winners and losers, the odds are good that the muskox, nature's ultimate survivalist, will be around for a long time coming, weathering, as it always has, the unpredictable winds of change.
In a remote corner of Canada, an amazing secret is being revealed. An animal that modern science had no idea existed. A new culture of wolves. Once the Earth's greatest four-legged land predator roamed the entire northern hemisphere. But its relationship with humans is like oil and water, and for centuries it was the wolf who became the hunted. Everywhere, that is, except here.
This is a place where you're not likely to be killed by a human being, in great contrast to everywhere else where wolves still exist today.
They may not be living exactly as they were 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, but what has evolved has been a natural evolution.
Lost in time, in one of the last wild places on Earth, is it possible that here, and only here, wolves still live the way wolves once everywhere did? How unique are they? How have they survived? What are the secrets of the coast wolf? On the extreme edge of northwest British Columbia, the Pacific Ocean collides with the coast mountains to create a global hotspot of biodiversity. Hugging 500 kilometers of coastline are the most pristine rainforests left in North America, and an archipelago of over 1,000 islands. It is one of nature's final frontiers. But so far, no one really knows what here is. It has never been fully studied by science. For the past decade, Ian McAllister, a founder of the Rain Coast Conservation Society, has navigated thousands of kilometers of this coastline, fighting to save these ancient rainforests from industrial logging. His preferred weapon is science, and uses it to learn how this poorly understood ecosystem works, and when it doesn't.
When we first started work up here, it was really based on exploration. There was a fair amount of work being done on salmon, the yearly counts of salmon, but for virtually all of the terrestrial components to this coastline, there was very, very little information.
At over 60,000 square kilometers, this is an area larger than Ireland, so it's easy to understand why information was scarce. Rain Coast first decided to study grizzly bears, a key species and an entry point to understanding the entire ecosystem. But instead of answers, they discovered a new mystery.
We realized that there were some big gaps in our knowledge, in particular the outer coastal island areas. And the reason for that is that we would have grizzly bear biologists working in these valleys, and they wouldn't see any grizzly bears, they would be seeing wolves.
Okay, there's three really easy, almost...
What puzzled them most was how the wolves got there.
Where really this conflict exists with the forest companies.
Some islands were 15 kilometers from the mainland, and it was thought that wolves didn't like to swim. It was a mystery begging for an answer. And so in 2000, McAllister, along with Dr. Paul Paquette, one of the world's leading wolf experts, and Chris Deramont, a biologist at the University of Victoria, spearheaded the Rainforest Wolf Project.
We think that historically the coastal wolf was probably found from northern California to southeastern Alaska. What makes this place so special is that those wolves are still here. And they're here in pretty much intact habitat that we can't find anywhere else.
Wind's in our favor, and the rain really keeps the smell close to the ground and doesn't move around too much, so it's maybe a good time to see some wolves.
It would become the most comprehensive study of its kind. Hundreds of days were spent in the field, but what really excited these scientists was how the coast wolf had adapted to the sea.
I've never seen wolves elsewhere swim the way that the wolves here do, and do it regularly and seemingly without concern. And it's because water is so predominant in their environment. It's everywhere, and they've adapted to it.
Wolves everywhere in the world like to move. In North America, they've been known to travel up to 100,000 square kilometers to find food or a mate. Here, they just learned how to swim for it. But the coast wolf's amazing adaptation to water didn't begin or end on a beach.
Before the work we did, nobody had systematically cataloged what the wolves were doing and how effective they were at fishing and so on. And that's a new contribution. And what we found is that they're very, very good preying on spawning salmon.
The scientists also learned that fishing season was the perfect time to observe wolves in the open. The annual salmon spawn is a time of détente between animals. Everything is focused on fattening up for winter, and the feast is endless. But coast wolves, it seems, are picky eaters.
If this fish is swimming up the creek, wolves will just trot in and grab right here with their teeth and just yank, up to a 10, 15, 20 pound salmon out of the creek, and it's still writhing back and forth, and they'll flop it down, they'll put their paws on it, And now we'll just open it right up and take off the head.
The scientists believed that they ate only the heads to avoid harmful parasites in the body. It was more evidence of a long-term relationship between wolves and the sea. But how long had it been here? To find out, they had to travel back in time.
We actually follow in the footsteps of wolves, pick up what they leave behind, these scats, and extract and amplify the DNA to ask questions about their evolutionary history and about which wolf was here, where, and when.
DNA, the double helix of the genetic code, the fundamental building block of life. What could it reveal about the secret life of the coast wolf? On the remote northwest coast of British Columbia, researchers had spent years unlocking the secrets of a new culture of wolves. Part of their success was due to some unique non-invasive study techniques. In the past, science had often relied on traps or tranquilizers to study animals up close. But Paul Paquette and Chris Darrimont believed that seeing wasn't everything. To learn even more, they collected scat-based DNA. In the human world, genetic fingerprinting has proven everything from guilt or innocence to the birth parents of a lost child. In the wolf world, thousands of scat samples were collected to help determine population sizes, how often wolves travel between islands, even its evolutionary history.
Many people wonder, well, how on earth is there DNA in scat? And what happens when the food that the wolf has eaten makes its way through the digestive tract? It picks up cells from the intestinal lining, and out those cells come with the scat. So in the scat here, there are literally thousands of skin cells from the wolf, and of course in every cell is the DNA. This is the first stage of a complicated process.
The second stage is 1,000 miles in a world far removed from the British Columbia coast. Here, Jennifer Leonard, a geneticist at the University of California in Los Angeles, uses more cutting-edge science to decipher secrets hidden in the coast wolf's DNA.
Once we get the feces in the lab, we first extract DNA from the feces, and then we take that and we can sequence it and read each base pair individually. And once we get all those sequences, we can compare them with the other wolves from all over the world.
It was the ultimate secret. Researchers knew the coast wolf was unique, but to find out how unique it really was, Leonard analyzed sequences in its genetic code called haplotypes.
A haplotype is just a version of genetic material, usually DNA. In this case, what we're studying is the mitochondrial DNA, which is a kind of DNA that's only passed from the mother to all of her children.
Inside the womb, as cells replicate during reproduction, genetic code in the mother's mitochondrial DNA is transferred. As this cycle repeats itself over thousands of years, mutations occur and are inherited as a new haplotype. More haplotypes in the DNA of an animal population means the more genetically diverse it is, something that can only occur undisturbed in the wild over a long period of time. But wolves have been hunted for centuries, and although genetic fingerprinting has identified 35 different haplotypes, As populations decreased, so did the number of mothers. So far, the largest number of haplotypes found in a single population is 5, and that made Leonard's results incredible, almost impossible.
All of Canada and Alaska that's been surveyed only have 5 haplotypes. So finding 14 haplotypes in just the coastal wolves of BC was very surprising. We expected 1 and maybe 2 haplotypes, and having 14 was vastly beyond what we imagined.
All these are North American wolves.
The results didn't prove the coast wolf had changed. Incredibly, they proved that it hadn't. But it had changed in the rest of North America, where hunting and habitat loss had decimated populations.
It is becoming more clear that the state of very high genetic diversity that we find in British Columbia is most likely the ancestral state, and that it isn't that the British Columbian wolves are strangely high in genetic diversity, but that the other populations are strangely low.
It was stunning clinical proof of what had been observed in the field, an ancient wolf living in the 21st century. But why here? As wild as it is, humans had lived here too for thousands of years. Except that here, a unique relationship exists between wolves and humans. They share the same territory, and wolves are not hunted for any reason.
We're all related to wolves. If I come into the company of a wolf, I'm not to harm it. I'm to speak to it, even if from my heart. And I'm to explain to it why I'm in its company. And I ask it for protection. We regard them as our brothers and our sisters.
Our working hypothesis at this time is that these wolves have maintained genetic diversity because they've not been persecuted to the extent of wolves in other wolves in North America and throughout the world.
It was something that couldn't be said about wolves anywhere else.
This is a different wolf. They've sort of gone on their own evolutionary route here on the coast. There's probably hundreds or thousands of other taxa or organisms that are also different on the coast. So in that way, the wolves become an entry point to understanding a bigger system.
But after an exhaustive study of the coast wolf, scientists are now in a race against time to protect this entire ecosystem. 50% of the British Columbia coast has already been logged. Soon, it could happen here too.
When you consider that this is the genetic evolution, or the product of genetic evolution spanning 70, 80 million years, and yet we can take down so much forest in such a short period of time, that definitely feels wrong.
Nowhere else in the world does an intact wolf culture exist. But as rare as it is, just like its home range, the last temperate rainforest on Earth, is this where it will make its final stand? It was time to leave science behind and explore on our own the secret world of nature's greatest land predator. Raw, remote, and so far almost untouched by humans, British Columbia's northwest coast may be the most pristine ecosystem on Earth. There are no roads, and the forest canopy is too thick, so our search for the coast wolf will be done exclusively by boat. The scientists who studied wolves here spent almost 5 years and traveled thousands of kilometers. Our crew has only a few weeks to find and film these rare, elusive animals. It's a tough challenge. Wolves are notoriously difficult to film. They travel vast distances, rarely stay in one place long, and are extremely nervous of any human contact. The home range of the coast wolf may be unique, but there are no guarantees they will be in the same locations they were studied last year. Traveling deep into this 1,000-island archipelago is a journey back in time. On the surface, it's easy to understand how these wolves have withstood the impacts of progress. Here it seems everything has. Rugged, primitive, and extremely difficult to access, it's too isolated for hunting and still too expensive to log. It's a wild, ancient world where time, it seems, has literally stood still. Once old-growth northern boreal rainforests, the rarest forest type on Earth, carpeted the entire west coast from California to Alaska. Today, the last virgin stands of Sitka spruce and western red cedar exist only here. Some are over 1,000 years old. As far as we know, wolves have lived here too for about 10,000 years. However, new science has suggested that the last great ice age may have missed the far western edge of North America. So it's possible that they've lived here even longer. We've traveled north for over a week, and every promising site has been a disappointment. Evidence of wolves is everywhere, but there are no fresh tracks or kills. Now the first big storm of the fall is brewing in the Pacific, and our crew is getting frustrated. But at least now it's also obvious why this coastal ecosystem is one massive rainforest. They land on an island about 1 kilometer from the mainland, and our cameraman, a veteran wildlife cinematographer, decides to try a howl. And suddenly, there they are, an alpha male and 2 curious teenagers. Their fur is the ochre color unique to the coast wolf. Healthy but nervous, they retreat quickly into the forest as soon as they catch our scent. It's unlikely they'll be back. After 100 tough, wet kilometers, a 30-second glimpse is no success at all. And so the crew continues north to an island they've heard of near Canada's border with Alaska. This island is almost 20 kilometers from the mainland, an almost impossible distance. But as science has already confirmed, this wolf likes to swim and fish for its dinner. It's also possible that they rode the tides to travel this far out, and now it may be too far to swim back. Finally, our crew finds the evidence they've been looking for: fresh salmon carcass. There are wolves here, and they've been fishing on this estuary today. By nightfall, an observation blind has been set up, and the crew settles in. Suddenly, the wait is over. In the black of night, our cameraman is caught off guard. He's alone in the blind, and it seems that the resident wolves have decided to let this intruder know whose territory this is.
Okay, I've got these wolves surrounding me here. There's 5 wolves, and they're not afraid of me.
He may have a night vision camera, but he's still at a distinct disadvantage.
I've got the night vision on, I bear sprayed one of them, and they're still circling. I'm probably the only other large mammal here other than the wolves.
It may be the first time wolves anywhere have been filmed at night, behavior never observed before, and these wolves are behaving boldly. It's an unexpected, unnerving success, and for the rest of this night, there will be no sleep. For all animals that live on this small island outpost, this estuary is the source of all life. It looks as if a family of 4 wolves lives here, an adult or alpha male, 2 females, and a lone pup. They know our camera is located just across the estuary, but clearly they don't seem to care. If they did, they'd be invisible. But this pack looks relaxed. They're the ones in charge here. In the fall, life on this island is as good as it gets. A time when wolves can eat, sleep, and play all day. Wolves are extremely social, and family is everything. Playtime reinforces the bond and relieves any tensions in the pack. Since time began here, life on the estuary has depended on 2 constant primordial rhythms, the rise and fall of the sun and the tides. On average, these are 23-foot tides, rising and falling every 6 hours. At over 4 feet an hour, water rushes in and out constantly. Only at the peak of high tide does the ocean seem to take a break. It's a rare moment of calm and a good time for harp seals to navigate upstream to fish. While ducks, geese, and many other shorebirds patiently wait for the inevitable. And then the ocean rushes out again. This intertidal zone between land and sea is a rich feeding ground. It's good hunting for the birds, although shellfish stranded by the tide always make for a challenging meal. For about 8 months of the year, the wolves here are also quite capable of scrounging a meal from these shallow tidal pools. But in the fall, they too feast in the stream. Every study of the coast wolf has revealed the same thing. Although the bulk of their diet is similar to their continental cousins, like all animals here, they eat a lot of salmon. Coast wolves will hunt deer, even bear. But on this island, where they seem to be the only large land mammals, without this annual surge of salmon, they couldn't survive. And right now, this stream is packed with them, eager to spawn. After a 4-year journey across thousands of kilometers of Pacific Ocean, these mature salmon are exhausted, and the wolves pick them off with ease. In the native legends of the Northwest, it is the raven who brought light to the world, breathed life into man, and convinced the salmon to come to this coast. Now the raven watches the wolf closely, who, in tribute, always leaves it a meal. Thousands of years of evolution has taught the great blue heron to stand perfectly still and wait for a fish to come to it. And so does this adult female. These salmon weigh about 15 pounds, but the wolves make quick work of them, puncturing the skull and killing them instantly. As science has confirmed, they eat only the heads. Some think it's because they can't digest parasites in the body cavity, but the head does contain the highest fat content. As fearless as they are, the adults have remained protective of their pup and kept it far away from our camera. But it's not just these new, unknown intruders that worry them. The alpha male has spied a lone wolf entering the estuary. It's probably just looking for a free lunch. But the alpha is in no mood to share his fish. They may have fought before, or perhaps the lone wolf is naturally cautious. Either way, he won't confront the alpha today. An alpha will defend his pack or territory against any intruder. It's another behavior that's rarely been filmed, and incredibly, this alpha knows we're watching. Once again, after dark, the wolves grow even more confident. Darkness is their true domain, and if our crew is smart, they'll retreat to their tent and wait for morning. But before they can react, the pack is back.
I've got the pack of wolves here again. And they're creeping around here somewhere. I can hear them. Whoa. It's all right. You're okay. Let's be friends. You settle down. Twigs snapping. Of course, around my tent. Get out of here.
More than any other animal, the wolf is a creature of myth and mystery. From the Grimm brothers to Walt Disney, the big bad wolf has had a unique grip in our imagination. But in the native legends of coastal British Columbia, wolves are neither wicked nor violent. One legend tells the tale of a hunter who lived on these islands. Every night he left his wife, only to return at dawn with fresh game. His wife wondered why he was such a great hunter, and soon learned he could transform himself into a wolf, the supreme hunter of the night. At night, wolves are indeed transformed. In a world dependent on scent and sound, their amazing eyesight makes nighttime their time. It's now pitch black. Wolves have never been filmed feeding at night, and they go about their business as if it were broad daylight, hunting, fishing, and eating. The wolfman's wife bore him 4 children, all wolves. But one night she heard laughter in her home. The pups had removed their fur cloaks and become human. The woman felt deceived that her children too could be transformed, and in her anger she threw 3 furs into the fire. The 4th pup escaped and became the coast wolf. But the others, with no fur for warmth or strong jaws and swift feet, remained merely human. At night, in the company of wolves, it's easy to feel merely human.
Where? Can you see with that camera? Hey, wolf. Hey, wolf. Just chill. Just get the bear spray ready.
No other animal would investigate humans like this, actively, curiously, and in total control.
Oh my God.
Here, perhaps only here, the historic relationship between wolves and humans has been reversed. Because here, it's the humans' turn to be wary of the wolves.
Just chill. Is she growling? the ground, dude.
Okay, yeah. Watch my back. See her?
Yeah. Watch that.
That's the mother.
Where?
Right here. Got her.
For a lot of reasons, sunrise is now our camera crew's favorite time of day. It's also low tide, and with the salmon exposed and vulnerable, eagles and shorebirds have arrived right on time. And so have the wolves. But today is different. For the first time, the whole pack has come to fish, as a family. This female is the pack teenager. She's at least 2 years old, but still an awkward hunter. Young coast wolves have a much lower mortality rate than wolves on the continent, but they still need to eat about 3 times as much protein as adults. The rich seafood diet here explains a lot about their high survival rate. But fishing skills are not instinctive. The alpha male shows his daughter how it's done. Wolves are the most intelligent of all land predators, but they still need to learn how to be wolves. And this teenager is learning well. Physically, an adult wolf is the size of a large dog, but a lot leaner. These are endurance animals built for the long-distance kill. Packs hunt by running their prey down, pursuing it until it's too exhausted to resist. But for a coast wolf, at least during the salmon run, there's no need for a long hunt. Here, the fishing is very good. The pup of the pack is about a year old, and he has a lot to learn. Right now, he doesn't even want to get his feet wet. His mother waits and watches patiently. Like all mothers, she knows he can do it. And she's right. He quickly dashes across and gets a warm nip of approval as a reward. The mother, too, is a proficient deadly hunter. Now it's the pup's turn to watch closely and then practice his own technique. Adults can go days without eating, but when they can, they will eat up to 1/5 their body weight, or about 18 pounds at one time. To survive the lean winter months ahead, gorging now could make the difference between life or death. But in good times or bad, a pack will rarely fight over food. And adults will never snatch food from a pup. If this one doesn't catch on soon and start fishing on his own, he too might not survive. Odds are he will, just like his sister has. Wolves are nature's prime social carnivores. Its behavior totally unique to wolves. For all others on this island, it's everyone for himself. No one knows how long this pack has been here, but as long as it has, it's depended on the sea for survival. It's the living proof our crew was looking for, of a unique ancient culture of wolves alive and well on Canada's remote northwest coast. After weeks filming wolves on a tiny island in the remote northwest corner of British Columbia, our camera crew is starting to believe that it's the wolves who are watching them. The best example so far of their uncanny confidence is to allow their pup to play exposed and in broad daylight. It's clear these wolves have no reflexive fear of humans, but we're not so sure that our humans still don't have a reflexive fear of wolves. Fall is advancing rapidly towards winter, while the salmon run is slowing down. Spawned out and exhausted, they make an easy meal. Another scientific breakthrough here is a new understanding of the contribution salmon make to the health of the rainforest itself. As their carcasses rot, nutrients, especially nitrogen, are deposited in the soil. This annual exchange between land and sea is a good reason why these rainforests are so fertile. The pup too has progressed quickly, and this fish is the first he's caught all on his own. If he's going to fatten up to survive the winter ahead, he needs to hurry up and catch even more. Soon enough, the spawn will end, and all the wolves here are now eating as much as they can. A wolf's natural life is about 10 years, but many die prematurely from disease or infection. They can bleed to death from a cut on the tongue. A sharp fish bone or a porcupine quill can infect and kill them. As a result, it's quite possible that by spring, it will be the young wolves who survived. For now, all their parents can do is teach them everything they can, as fast as they can. Wolves use 3 known methods of communication: howling, posturing, like baring their teeth, and scent marking. Scent marking is poorly understood by science. We think it's used to warn both the pack and intruders where a home territory begins and ends. But if this message, delivered personally, is too subtle for our crew, the Alpha has another way of letting us know whose island this is. The crew has set up this microphone to record the natural sound of the estuary.
Hey! That's enough. That's enough! Don't make me come out there.
The jaws of a wolf can exert a crushing pressure of 1,500 pounds per square inch, more than twice that of a large dog.
Hey! Go eat the fish.
The manual doesn't say how much pressure the microphone can resist, but we're pretty sure it's less than 1,500 pounds.
Hey! Hey now! Don't eat the mic!
The Alpha makes short work of it. It's a $5,000 meal. The crew sets the microphone up a second time, and again the Alpha approaches. But this time, he's figured it out. To claim his prize, he needs to cut the microphone cable.
Okay, I gotta locate the mic here. It's not listening at all.
It's another amazing display of behavior and intelligence. It's also the clearest message yet that wolves are the dominant species here. But after sunset, the pack has another surprise.
Don't be surprised if they come around tonight.
Almost every night, our crew has had an unnerving visit from the pack that's made sleep a luxury. The weather hasn't helped either. Their main night vision camera has been damaged by rain and salt water. Now a single backup camera is all they have left.
What's that noise?
But tonight, the pack isn't interested in the crew. They're interested in the crew's inflatable Zodiac.
Where? Holy shit. He's going to town on the Zodiac. Grab the handheld. Watch that. Can't get her. That's that hose from the boat. Yeah, this guy looks to chew on shit. He's just sending messages. Where's the other one? Whoa. How you doing, big guy? Hey there. You're a pretty wolf. Stand by. Stand by. Just hang on. Okay, I think the show's over.
Now it's the crew's turn to be curious. Why would the wolves attack their boat? Chewed up microphones, a damaged Zodiac. We may have just worn out our welcome. And the next morning, it is over. Time to let these wolves get on with simply being wolves. Their future, however, remains a big question mark. But if humans don't empty these waters of salmon or destroy these rainforests with commercial logging, or a natural disaster or disease doesn't upset their island paradise, then they just might survive. The coast wolf is the rarest wolf on Earth, because isolation has allowed it to live just as it has for thousands of years. But ironically, its best chance to survive thousands more will be with the help of something uniquely human: a bit of luck.